There we Awesome. Okay, I have some notes, Brandon. I'm excited to see you. I've been watching you for like 2 months straight, all day, every day, in the car, everywhere. You come everywhere with me.
I love
Uh,
it.
Thank you for this is for my podcast. I'm going to share it on my YouTube, my Facebook, all my socials. And my podcast is called Freedom, the Old Soul's Guide to Healing Anxiety and Inherited Trauma. So, what I really deal with a lot is words and how words create someone's experience. And it's so much more powerful than I ever thought, even though I had degrees in psychology and sociology. It wasn't until I started training in neuro linguistic programming, the science of words and how that creates the neurochemistry in your brain.
Hmm.
And that really, really helped me and my clients heal anxiety and create a different life experience. So when I came across you, and I have to say I came across you probably about 2 years ago, and I signed up for your emails and your course. Your course is free, the Contract Killer 2.0. I was like on the tail end when you had the 1.0, but you just came out with the 2.0 and you said it was such an improvement. So I just focused on that. And it really was like drinking from a fire hydrant. It was like so much information. And I would just listen to the recordings and save them and listen to them again and listen to them again and listen to them again. And I basically just took the pressure off of me to have it done in any kind of set time. Um, and so that was back in 2024. And then the beginning of this year is when I really started to absorb what you're teaching. So I just want to outline like what I mentioned for the listeners and the viewers. Um, like where I'm coming from, the lens I'm looking at what you're teaching, which I'm going to ask you all about soon. And how it overwhelmed me a little bit at first. And so don't be dissuaded or discouraged if that happens to you too. It'll sink in. I feel like it's like a sponge that's hard at first, that has been sitting out. And then when you first wet it, the water kind of runs off. But if you keep wetting it, it gets in there. So that's why I play it when I'm in the car. I don't play the radio, I play your videos.
I love it.
Yeah, because it's awesome. It's empowering. And that is what I do. I try to, no, I don't try. I empower people
Hmm.
to think for themselves, to critically think, to create new scenarios, to make a new story for their family line. And starting in 2020, I started to see how that was applying to our communities and our government and then our world. Like the same kind of strategies that narcissists use, which is a buzz thing going on now, but triangulation, divide and conquer, all those things, the word games, it
Hmm.
all applies here. And you really highlight that, name it. And naming it like you do dissolves the confusion because that's another tactic, divide and conquer the confusion. All those things really help you stay under someone else's control and you don't even know it.
Hmm.
Um, Without consent, without your consent, which we'll get into. I'm pretty sure of it. So yeah, so I found you and contract. Let me just look at my little bullets, make sure I touched on everything before I start asking you questions. Um, One of the things I just want to, and I want to like mention this and then let you share with share with us. Um, in one of your videos, because I take notes. Now I'm like a crazy person. I have notes. And so in your contract course, your contract killer course 2.0, video 3 at minute 44, 10 seconds, um, you share that words do not mean what you think they mean. Most important thing by far, the words do not mean what you think they mean in contracts, in terms and conditions, in everything you're signing and not signing. Um, and that you say that you should be looking up words constantly. Money does not mean money as you think it does. Driver doesn't mean driver like you think it does. Motor vehicle doesn't mean motor vehicle. Value, consideration, United States, citizen, nothing means what you think it means or what we were conditioned to believe that it means. And that's the issue. I love how you say this. You are living in a delusional nightmare, and that delusional nightmare is made up of incorrect definitions.
That's
So
correct.
on a broader kind of like overview, yeah, um what would you say about what else would you say about for the listeners like paying attention to the words? I know you shared that you look up every word if you have to, if you don't know what it means, or even if you think you know what it means.
Yeah, so I'm a Scientologist, and I have been for probably about since about 2005, and I'm one of the highest trained Scientologists on the planet. And by highest trained, I mean there are courses in the religion that you can do. I've done almost every course you can possibly even buy in the religion, which I don't really think there's hardly anybody in the planet that's in that condition. It became a center point of my whole life when I turned 19 years old, and then I worked for the church for several years. One of the most fundamental aspects of being a Scientologist is the clearing of words. We call it word clearing. We have word clearing technologies. For example, we have a type of word clearing called Method 7 word clearing, which is for somebody who is illiterate, where when they're reading and they start to, if they say a different word, or if they stumble, or if they look confused or anything like that, you stop them and you look for the word they just went past that they didn't fully understand, and you help them clear it up in a very, very simple way. And then there's other more advanced types of word clearing where when somebody stumbles or you find a word that someone doesn't fully understand, you go on an entire kind of historical dig to go through various different types of definitions and definitions that are linked together and the histories of definitions. So, um, this idea in Scientology we call it study technology, and there's a free course that you could sign up for online to learn more about the study technology that we use. Uh, but having lived that life for so long, it looking up the definitions of words and also even going so far as clearing up the etymology and historical aspects of the various meanings of the words throughout time and why has been as normal to me as driving a car or yawning in the morning for probably since probably around 2011 is when I really started to understand that technology more, be more learning that technology in a deeper way. There's a course that we have. There's some basic courses that we have that you can do, like basic study manual or learning how to learn. These are like entry level courses for what's called study technology. But then in the academy, which is the upper level courses, we have a course called the Student Hat course. And it takes about, 4 to 6 weeks full time. And it's all the information and training to become essentially a professional student. And obviously the core of that entire technology is the spotting, the recognizing, and the clearing of misunderstood words.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned Scientology, and I've heard you mention it before, of course, because I've gone through the whole course in a couple videos several times, and some of the advanced videos and the litigation videos, and I'm doing some things. Um, but when I was younger, people would say to me I was too sensitive, and I was paying too much attention to the meaning of a word. Like I didn't mean it like that. You're too sensitive. And which I now see as like gaslighting. But I was drawn, yeah, that's what that was.
That's right. Yep.
All right. But I was drawn to when I was young, like in my early 20s, and I first got my first apartment, I went and I bought Dianetics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was drawn to that. And I remember him, I didn't go further with it like you're mentioning and these courses because I didn't realize that the focus was so well on words. But obviously I came back around to it with the NLP, the neuro linguistic programming.
Hmm.
And so I can feel like the power of your trainings with Scientology. It might, echo in what I've trained. I actually trained with NLP Marin, which is I feel like maybe you're not in that area. That's San Francisco area, I guess. Marin.
I'm in LA, so yeah, I don't know what
Okay.
that is.
Oh,
And frankly, I've never really done much traveling through California, so I'm not. I grew up in Indiana, so I'm kind of a more of an East Coast boy, and I lived in New York City for 5 years and stuff. So
oh,
I actually haven't
well,
seen much of California. It's so pretty. I should, but I haven't, to tell you the truth.
I don't blame you. I would probably be staying inside there too, unfortunately. But I'm in Philly now. But yeah, so the power, like when I started to learn the power of the words is when the psychology training and all that actually made sense. Because before that, the psychology and sociology actually made me feel worse. Like I was like, I should be able to feel better. I should be able to fix this. I should be able to blah, blah, blah. But when I learned the power of the words, um, and you're even going to word stems, which is fascinating when you start to learn the word stems. Um, I it changed everything. It really made me feel so even if I was scared, and I am scared, sometimes, and some of the things that you talk about, like stepping in a courtroom, um, that you haven't had to do yet. I actually have been in a courtroom for 7.5 years for this court case I'm in. So that to me, where it would have been, I know you talked too about how men would usually be okay with that because that's like kind of like a rite of passage that, you know, pulls that masculinity forth, healthy masculinity. Women would shy away from that. I was actually terrified of that, but I had to do it. So now it's like 7.5 years. I'm like, okay, buddy, like whatever. I've been in court for 7.5 years. I'll keep going. I don't want to go, but if I have to go, I'll go. So just feeling that kind of confidence, even in the face of fear, is the power of words. I feel like it can shape that for you. It can give that to you.
Definitely. That's why this type of thinking is so powerful in law, because as you've noticed, and as people who have barely even touched the surface of any of this will notice, there's definitions for everything. There's definitions page, there's a definitions section, there's definitions listed on all your tax forms, there's definitions all over your passport application, there's definitions on every single instructions page. For anyone who's in HR, a lot of these kinds of people, they'll get a form, let's say a W-9 form, and they'll very often review the instructions page. So every single page from the government, pretty much, has a secondary instructions page. So if you type in W-9 form, it'll
Hmm.
pop up and it'll have two links. It'll have a link to the W-9 form on the IRS website, and it'll have a link to instructions about W-9 form, which is a different form. So all these forms have a secondary instruction page. So if the definitions aren't on the main page, typically you will find most of them on the instructions page. Every single area of law either begins with at least defining some of the words, or it has an entire introductory section all about just definitions for the entire section. Every bill has starts off with a definition section typically for what's going on inside of that particular bill. Uh, Going after the definitions of words is probably one of the most effective legal strategies. And I've heard so many attorneys tell me that, oh yeah, in my 25-year career, I've only looked in Black's Law Dictionary maybe two or three times. And to me, that is, and my answer is, and that is why you've had a very mediocre career, at best. The difference between a great communicator, a great litigator, a great salesperson, a great anything, healer, whatever you want to call it, is the ability to communicate, right? Communication is the key to everything. The cornerstone of the ability to communicate is the ability to locate and define words, which are essentially just symbols. One letter is a symbol. A word is a series of symbols that has one insular meaning. An idiom is a series of words that have one meaning together as a unit that oftentimes have nothing to do with the actual words individually. A phrase is the same thing. So a phrase, an idiom, a word, or even a letter could all be defined as a series or series of symbols that communicate something. And if you don't have the definition of what that symbol or word or phrase or idiom may be, then you are not communicating because the other person thinks you're talking about fish when you're actually talking about the PGA golf tour.
Yeah. Yeah. And this goes back to what you were talking about when you teach someone who is illiterate, right? In the Scientology, I forget framework that you mentioned, but when you teach someone who's illiterate, you pause where they lost the understanding on that. You got to break it down like frame by frame by frame. Well, this is what they're doing to us, the general public, is that W-9 form and then all the definitions of the W-9 form. And what happens? Most people don't stop and they don't even read what number one, number two, number three, number four. Okay, but if they do, and I was guilty of this too. I read it, I don't understand it, and I sign it anyway. Uh, when you stop and slow down, and if you don't understand one word, the word after the, you go to their definition of it on the instructions page. And anywhere you break, like you said, that training, we are illiterate in all these contracts coming our way, and we are being um, misled into signing these contracts. I wanted to touch on too. Like I watched Ian Carroll. I thought immediately of you when Ian Carroll was.
I know.
I was like, and then you
I've tried so hard to connect with him because I really do believe he is the closest thing to my platform in terms of
demographic.
his audience would go absolutely
They
over
would.
the fucking moon for this shit. Yeah, his audience is definitely my ideal audience. Anyways, continue. Sorry, I just wanted to
Yeah,
say
yeah.
that.
No, that's yeah. Thank you. Um, when I saw him, he was talking about arbitration,
Yeah, that's
and
correct. Yes.
I right away.
That was a great video, by the way.
I, I'm thinking I don't know about arbitration ins and outs like you do, but I remember one of your videos said arbitration is the worst. Stay away from it. You're giving up your rights, your constitutional rights. Constitutional people, we are not a democracy. That's another mantra that's been
There's two
dropped.
constitutions. There's the original one, which is what everybody thinks they whenever they hear the word, and then there's what's called the federal constitution, which is actually just the 14th Amendment, which is so when people hear the word constitution, they think of 1776,
Mhm.
but the legal system, whenever they hear the word constitution, they think 1868. That
Interesting. Yeah.
different constitution, which is the 14th Amendment. So the miscommunication is when you say constitution, you would say United States of America Constitution from 1776. That way you're being specific. Or if you want to go even farther, you would say the United States of America Constitution from 1776. And I'm not talking about the federal constitution, meaning the 14th Amendment from 1868 at all. That's
Right.
as clear as you can possibly make it because what happens is in all of legalese and all of law, any millimeter you give them to
Yep.
be snake nasty pieces of shit, they will take it.
Yeah.
So the thing is that that's why definitions and specifics, and like for example, people don't realize there's two types of citizenship. There's actually three, but there's really just two that I talk about. There's the state citizen and there's the U.S. citizen category. You say, I am a white state citizen of California, in accordance with what is said by, Chief Justice Taney in the Dred Scott versus Sanford decision of 1857, and the Honorable Samuel Freeman Miller from the Slaughterhouse cases of 1873. And I am not in any way, shape, or form a U.S. citizen or associated with the 14th Amendment or have any rights under the 14th Amendment at all, which can be claimed or pushed upon me. So you say it like that, you're saying it so clearly. There's absolutely nothing anyone can say or do. There's no way in, there's no chinks in that armor. And if you don't have the definitions, you can't clearly communicate yourself. And that's why people fall down in the legal world.
And that's what they're counting on. So they're creating a language that we feel illiterate in. And then they layer all these contracts and this administration stuff on top. And if you don't know, you're basically consenting by not knowing to say, we do not consent. I do not consent.
Yeah.
Um, And that is like the crux of, I haven't really gotten into the driving thing. I know I was like, oh, stay away from real ID. That's just another way to give a person credit score, like a people score. Forget that. Real ID is bullcrap. I know I'm going to get to that eventually when I have the bandwidth. But what I dove in on and focused on so far is the contract stuff, and how credit cards, how everything misleads you. Um, they don't. They'll send you a letter and they won't sign the letter, and they'll say like, we really value you as a client and we really value you as a customer, but they won't sign the letter. And then when you do call the 800 number, I have actually taken to recently, are you in the United States of America? And 9 times out of 10, they're not even in the United States of America. They're in, they'll admit they're in India or wherever they are. So you're basically contracting. And to go back to the Ian Carroll thing, when you sign a waiver, for example, for your kid to play at the jump park, was one of the things he was focusing on. I forget what it was called, whatever
Yeah,
jumpy
there's
park.
an arbitration agreement in there. There's an arbitration and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you sign that waiver, you think it's a waiver so your kid can jump. You're signing a contract that puts you in, if anything happens, you're giving your constitutional of 1970 or 1776 rights away, and you're agreeing to arbitration, which is basically, I remember from one of your recordings, it's crap. It's not even a courtroom as the founding fathers intended in any way, shape, or form. And you can't appeal it. And that's why they want to railroad you into that. So
That's
that's
correct.
another layer of control on top of you. And this is how the smoke and mirrors, it feels like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain. He just keeps putting layers of confusion and language that you don't understand, and this and that and this and that. And you're helping us uncover that, untangle that, you know?
Yeah, people think legalese is English, and that's the problem. Legalese is an entirely separate language. If you think of legalese like Romanian, you'll
Hmm.
you'll be a lot better off. Just think of
Hmm.
it like Romanian. If
Hmm.
you think of it that way, and you think of how much work would it take for me to learn Romanian, legalese is going to take you pretty much the exact same amount of work.
Yep.
Um, there's a lot of people out there that will say that legalese is harder to learn than any other language on the planet. I don't think I agree with that. I think it's pretty much just as hard.
Hmm.
Um, a good example of a daily word that people don't understand the definition of would be the term doing business. Doing business as. I'm doing business as. The term doing business, the legal definition of the term doing business means a foreign company that's here as a foreigner, like a Chinese company that's here in California doing business. That's the legal definition of the term doing business.
Hmm.
So when you say you have a DBA on your business, that means your business is a foreign business doing commerce within California. There's something called the Commerce Clause, which is how the federal government gains jurisdiction over a business or activity. The first
Hmm.
point of the Commerce Clause is commerce with foreign nations. So when you use the term doing business or doing business as, what you're doing is you're activating the Commerce Clause and you're giving the federal government jurisdiction over your business.
Hmm. That's what all this is all about, is giving away your power, giving jurisdiction to something outside of you. Like even the United States, right? I've learned from a couple people, not just you. So I don't know if this comes from you, but I started with the tax stuff. Um, the United States, I think it was Payman, I forget what his last name is, Motahade or something, and he teaches that United States is really, actually, if you look at the definitions like you tell us to do, and you dig down and you learn what that means to them in that instance, and they make a lot of smoke and mirrors about it. It's Washington, D.C., actually, and it's the 10-mile radius. And go ahead.
It's Washington, D.C. and all of the U.S. territories, insular possessions, and federal zones. So it's a little bit more to it. But yes, essentially, because the U.S. territories are possessions, people don't really understand how that works. For example, Alaska and Hawaii were U.S. territories for quite some time. U.S. territories are not states. They're a whole different classification. They're sort of like land that is owned by the federal nation, and we kind of as a whole nation, the entire United States of America as one whole unit sort of owns and controls some particular zone or area, either through contract or treaty or buying it. For example, California was purchased. It may have been a U.S. territory for a short time until they decided to make it a state. A state, you can think of a state as sort of like a more permanent fixture into the United States of America. A state is a sovereign entity from the federal government. A
Hmm.
U.S. territory or insular possession during the time period when it's basically owned before it's converted into a state is actually what's called, it's actually under the exclusive territorial jurisdiction of Washington, D.C. So when they say United States, basically in English, it means the District of Columbia and all other zones or areas that are within the exclusive territorial jurisdiction of Washington, D.C., and none of the 50 independent sovereign states would fit under that definition.
Right. Right. So you say it so much better. You understand it much better than I do. And I do, I remember, I feel like Puerto Rico was in that. And so that's what you're referencing.
So some of the most common U.S. territories, if you look them up, are Guam, Puerto Rico, American Samoa, the Swains Islands, um, the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Hmm. Right. Okay. So as he was teaching it specific to taxes, um, or not federal tax, IRS.
So
Um,
in the tax code, that is the definition. It's the same definition I just explained.
exactly. So when you read it as someone who's illiterate, even if you graduated college with a PhD, I was illiterate in that language.
Yeah.
I think United States citizen means me, and it doesn't. Not in that definition when I
Well,
look at.
citizenship, United States citizen is an entirely different subject from the term United States as well. That's also an entirely different subject, right? Because
Yeah.
when
Mhm.
you start going down that rabbit hole, the term United States citizen before the slaughterhouse cases of 1873, it meant a state citizen. It meant a citizen of one of the sovereign states. So if someone was born in the District of Columbia before 1873, they actually didn't have any citizenship at all. And they actually had to naturalize into a state no differently than somebody who was immigrating from France or Italy, right?
Mhm.
So the whole point of the slaughterhouse cases was to fix that, but also what happened was is that all of the released the legal term is Negro, so I'm just going to go ahead and use that because it's the legal term that you're going to see everywhere in all of these cases. So I might as well just get it out of the way now before you're shocked now or you're shocked later. But that term has a legal definition of which no one listening to this has any clue. It's a whole long rabbit hole. In fact, the term doesn't really mean anything in today's society, so that's a whole nother conversation. So
Mhm.
after the 13th Amendment, all of the slaves of African descent, referring specifically to the Negroes, were released from slavery, but they didn't have any citizenship. And what happened was is they were getting taken advantage of. They had no protections of the court. They had no protections of the law. They had nothing. They were being abused by every single institution economically. It was just as bad, if not worse, than when they were in slavery.
Mhm.
It's probably worse, frankly, because at least in slavery they had a place to live and they were being fed and had somewhat of a protection from whatever violence out there in the world. Whereas when they were released at the 13th Amendment, from the research I've done, it was even worse than when they were in slavery, right? So there was this big uprising in terms of like this isn't going to work, obviously. So then what happened was there was a case called the Slaughterhouse cases where all of the Supreme Court justices all got together like they do and they tried to figure out how we're going to fix this problem. And on April 14th, 1873, the opinion was given by Mr. Samuel Freeman Miller, who was a doctor who taught himself law by himself while he was practicing medicine for 10 years. And he, for probably 25 years, he wanted to release the slaves. He wanted to release the slaves when he was a doctor. So he taught himself law, and then he got admitted as a justice, and then he made his way all the way up the ranks, all the way to the very top, and he became an associate Supreme Court justice. So it made perfect sense that they had him give that final opinion because it was something he had been trying to do and working towards for over 2 decades of his life, right?
Hmm.
When he finally stood up and he gave that final opinion in the slaughterhouse cases, April 14th, 1873, what he says is that the term U.S. citizen prior to this point wasn't really its own specific legal classification. Now, here we are in this case, we are going to make it an entirely separate legal classification, specifically for all of the released Negro slaves. They're not going to have all the rights of a white person who's a state citizen of one of the several states, as America has been operating all this time since 1776. We're going to give them what's called civil rights, which was based off of the Civil Rights Act of around the same time period as the 14th Amendment. And then the 14th Amendment became what's called the federal constitution for that secondary class of citizens called the U.S. citizen category. Then, over the years, after that point, the first 10 amendments, including the right to free speech, the right to bear arms, none of those amendments, none of those, the Bill of Rights doesn't never applied to a U.S. citizen, ever, even from the very beginning. The only single and unqualified absolute right of a United States citizen at the very, very beginning, when that classification was separated, was that they have the right to basically be in the United States. They can't be deported and they can't be denied reentry. And that single absolute right is clarified in a case called U.S. versus Valentine, which is a case from 1968 where the judge actually covers that in the case, how they really only have one absolute right. And that's exactly why the 14th Amendment is called privileges and immunities. So
Hmm.
white state citizens have rights. The released Negro slaves, which became U.S. citizens, they don't have any. They have one right, which is to be. They could be here, and they can't be deported. They can't be denied reentry. Everything else above and beyond that single absolute right is a privilege and immunity.
Hmm.
So what happened was after that point, there was something called the indoctrination doctrine, which is basically the definition of that is just every single there was a tons and tons and tons and tons of court cases over the next 150 years up till now where they started to basically reincorporate the white man, the white state citizen's rights back into the US citizen category. So if I did a screen share, I can
Yeah.
show you the exact cases and the exact dates of when these rights and stuff started to become incorporated back into for the U.S. citizen category, right? So, for example, you can see that each individual amendment describes whether it's fully incorporated or partially incorporated or not incorporated.
Mm.
So people say, I have a Fifth Amendment right, but then in the same sentence they identify as a U.S. citizen. That is an incorrect statement. The right to indictment by a grand jury has not been incorporated. And the case that covers the fact that a U.S. citizen does not have that right is a case called Hurtado versus California from 1884. The Second Amendment was not incorporated back in for the U.S. citizen category until 2010 in a case called McDonald versus Chicago.
Mm.
Now, this entire subject that I'm talking about right now, this reincorporation and U.S. citizens and all that, none of this has anything to do with white people. But if you if
I've
you
seen your
if you
post, yeah,
if
recently.
you if you identify as a U.S. citizen, you're basically telling the government you're essentially a released Negro slave after the 13th Amendment. When you're telling them that you are a U.S. citizen, all of this whole incorporation doctrine thing activates.
Right.
And the thing about the incorporation doctrine, the most depressing part of the incorporation doctrine is, as a note, the Ninth Amendment and 10th Amendment have not been incorporated, and it is unlikely they ever will be. The Ninth Amendment is one of the most powerful, most incredible amendments. It's way more badass than the Second Amendment. It's way more badass than the First Amendment. Here's the Ninth Amendment. It's just one sentence. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. And if I were to say this in English,
Thank you.
if I were to say this in English, it just means as long as you aren't hurting other people, degrading their life, degrading their
Right.
ability to pursue happiness, or any other basic element to the rights of people being able to pursue happiness or whatever in their life, anything you say is your right as long as it's not doing that.
Hurting someone else. Yeah. Yeah. This bring, and I love what you're sharing. And I know that you've gotten, your recent posts have gotten more into the citizen, and I haven't dove in as much. So this is more info for me. So thank you for this. Um, but this whole point I was feeling today and yesterday big time because I got a parking ticket. And I'm like, see, this kind of stuff is like, it irritates people. There's just all day long shit that doesn't need to happen. Like, if you're not parked in the middle of the street holding up traffic and, parked sideways or whatever, if you're parked on the side of the street, even if it's only for, an hour and a half, why? Why does there need to be a ticket? You're not bothering anybody. And that is the Ninth Amendment. That speaks exactly to that.
That's
You're not
correct.
hurting anybody.
So
Um,
but the thing is, if you say you're a U.S. citizen or you're classified as a U.S. citizen, you can't use the Ninth Amendment. If you are a state citizen like me,
mm,
which for 95% of people in America, being a state citizen just means saying it, literally. For 92 or 95 or 90% of everybody in America, or I don't know, probably something around those numbers, I imagine. Um, you can use the Ninth Amendment. I can use the
okay,
Ninth Amendment. Almost everybody out there can't, and they because they don't understand what that means. I can use the Ninth Amendment all the time. So that's the easiest route. The Ninth Amendment's the easiest way to win anything.
right. I want to say to the people listening and viewing, I am working on understanding this, and I still don't understand this part of it. There are pieces that I'm like, oh, I got it now. Like it clicks, um, like the credit card stuff and the SBA, Small Business Administration, that kind of stuff. Contracts, the contractual stuff in a more like traditional mindset of contracts. But this is all new to me, like brand new to me, what you're sharing now. And I'm trying to understand it, and I don't quite yet, but that's not going to stop me. So everybody just know, like, you're going to have to keep listening to this and watch it over and over. And it's important. Like, if taking the time to learn Romanian, seems like a drag, this is the most important thing there is learning what's really true, what your God-given rights are.
You're gonna. I mean, like when you start learning this language, the very first thing that's going to happen to you, probably most likely, is you're not going to be paying taxes anymore.
Yep.
Not paying
Yep.
taxes, is I know it sounds crazy to a lot of people who are new to this.
Yep.
It is the easiest fucking thing
Yep.
in the world.
I feel
I
you.
mean,
Yeah.
to stop paying taxes is completely acceptable, extremely easy to do, and they pretty much always accept it. Now, let me just make one caveat on that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm referring specifically to federal income tax, the IRS, the big boogeyman.
Mm-hmm.
The IRS, we're suing everybody under the sun, moon, and stars, government agencies, health and human services. I don't think there's an agency out there we haven't sued or aren't planning on suing. There's only one agency that literally does every single fucking thing we ask, every single time we ask anything of it. Maybe not right away. We may need to repeat ourselves a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
but we always get everything we ask. And that agency is the Internal Revenue Service.
Yep. And when you say we, Brandon Joe Williams, that means you well, you have two things. He has one stupid fuck, which is his his pickletarian um, shingle on the door, so to speak. That'll stop you walking down the street. You'll definitely pay attention. What is that? And then also Williams and Williams is a website that you have. But when you say we, you mean you, and I know how you say your right hand man, Joey.
Joey Kimbrough. No, when I say we, I mean the 100,000, the army that we have, the standing army that we currently have. We've got about
Awesome.
like
Awesome.
our main like core unit, not including all of the fringe people that may be kind of around the corners. We're like 100,000 strong right now. We have a whole, it's a whole army. It's like a standing army of litigants, people doing some of this or filing something or opening up trusts or doing some sort of real activity, people who are starting to actually become proficient in the language. I would
Mhm.
say at this point we're probably somewhere around 100,000, and just as of the last few months it started to really fucking take off. And when I say really take off, I mean millions and millions and millions and millions of hits on social media, which wasn't the case before. It took me 2 or 3 years to build it up to, maybe 100,000 or a few 100,000 hits. But the past few months, we've exploded into at least 10 to 20x that in the last 3 months.
Yeah,
So,
that's
so it's really taking off big time, right? So
and
the
where
hundred,
can
the
people find you?
100,000,
They can
the
find you on YouTube. They can find you on Instagram. They can find
Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok. I don't like TikTok that much. I'm technically on LinkedIn, but I absolutely can't stand that
that.
platform to save my life.
Mhm.
I really use Instagram and Facebook the most, but then I also have a lot going on YouTube as well. I have a very active YouTube channel. Um,
Yeah.
so, but you can get all that through, you can type my name into any internet, any search engine. You can type in onestupidfuck.com. That's going to have links to everything on the top, all the socials and all the stuff. So you just, if you can't find me, you got to, Helen Keller could find me with almost no
Yeah,
effort. So it wouldn't be.
you've got a great it's well thought out, so much work put into it. You can really see the dedication and passion that you have. Um I want oh, what I wanted to ask just slipped my mind. Okay, if you have something to say until it
But
comes.
yeah, it's when you start learning this language, the difference between learning legalese and any other language is it's you start to reap the benefits in a real physical way in your life right away. I mean, a lot
Yes.
of the definitions and a lot of the things and a lot of the language, you don't even need to do anything.
Yep.
And when I say that, I mean like you could go and get a job and they put a W-9 in front of you, and depending on the situation you can say thanks, but I don't sign those kinds of forms.
Yep.
um we don't typically teach to do that, and there's a lot of other options that you have to get that done, but there's always the possibility that they just say okay, because the thing is that those forms actually are not required. They think they
Not
are,
volunteer.
but
Yeah,
they're actually not.
we're misled to think that you hear that your W-9 is not, or yeah, your W-9 is not required. You can write exempt. There's some form, there's a form you have on your website there that was like a special exempt form or something. You can
You
write
can
exempt.
do
Yeah.
a W-4 exempt, and then you can also do what's called a W-8 BEN, which is a foreign beneficiary form. And then if you have a corporation or trust or something like that, they oftentimes will have you sign a W-9 for those as well, because the definition of the word person in law
Mhm.
includes things like corporations and trusts, and that's why they'll have a trust or a business sign a W-9. Um, there's a different form for things like trusts and corporations called a W-8 EXP form. So, for example, I have a whole series of trusts. If I were to contract with some corporate agency, I would actually fill out a W-8 EXP on behalf of my trust to contract with those people. And it's super fun to watch their attorneys burst into flames and run around in circles. And then they call me, and then I make fun of them over the phone, and it's a very pleasurable experience for me, anyways.
Mhm.
Because there's nothing that makes me happier than knowing that you have this guy and he went to law school and he got his little bar business card bullshit, and he's running around and he thinks he's this big hotshot attorney for 5 or 6 or 7 years, and this guy named One Stupid Fuck who wears a Borat mankini and has transformed himself into a
Yeah.
pickle on the internet is on the phone with him and just making him seem like he is completely useless, retarded, worthless, and should have never ever became an attorney to begin with. And that alone is worth all the effort.
Yeah, you know what? You again, you've helped me, you've empowered me with that too. I had this $1,500 bill that was during the scamdemic, that's what I call it. And it was in 2020 and I was trying to pay it and all kinds it was upside down, backwards, whatever. And so I got a letter from, and I want to ask you, I want you to tell everybody what BAR stands for in a second. Um, and he's like, he's quoting the UCC to me in letters. And I mean, this is like from 2020. Where are we? 2025. So 5 years later. And I was like, oh my gosh, he's trying to scare me. Honestly, it's like he's trying to terrorize me. And it's pissing me off because I used to fall for this. You know what I mean? And I don't care anymore. You're not scaring me. Yeah, I mean, if you the language, I mean, I wish I had it near me. On one hand I do, and on one hand I'm glad I don't have it anywhere near me, but the language in it is like, on UCC this and that and lean this and that, and I'm like, no, none of this is true. I know what I looked up. Brandon's on that Cornell site, something specific, and I'm not afraid. So what does BAR stand for? A bar card holding attorney, is that English?
A
British?
lot of people say it's the British Accreditation Regency, and then the bar themselves will say it's not. They'll say it's something else and all this kind of bullshit. The whole legal structure and everything in America comes from England. So the fact that the bar does mean the British Accreditation Regency and it's attached to Britain wouldn't be shocking at all because all of common law, the entire basis of our entire system comes from England. This is an English culture that broke off from England and took, a vast majority of that culture with it, including slavery.
Mhm.
Slavery is not an American thing. It's an English thing that was brought to America from England, and it was part of this culture even when we were colonies. So the English aspect of who we are and what we are, even if it is the British Accreditation Regency, really shouldn't be all that shocking because everything is from Britain. So that's not really. People say, "Oh my God, the bar, it means British Accreditation Regency. How
Yeah, it's
how
not shocking.
crazy is that?" It's really not.
Not shocking to
Nothing
me at
about it
all.
is shocking at all. Yeah, so it's not
When
really anything to really even call home about.
when we technically, and I'm sure you know the dates and some things that happen much more accurately than me, but the gist of it, the feeling of it, the sense of it, the feminine of it, when we got our freedom in 1776, they didn't like that. We won our freedom, and from the inside out, uh, basically are, taking, what is that called? Jurisdiction back over us little by little by these little things. And most people are so busy, and this is what we're conditioned to do. Let's see, my grandparents are immigrants from Italy, southern Italy. Like the life there is so much different. Especially my grandfather was born in 1896.
Hmm.
So the lifestyle was, you're not, living to work, or like you're not there's a great work ethic, but you're enjoying, you're in nature. You're not inundated constantly with things to be scared about. And now we are. And so we get up and we drive an hour and a half to work or whatever. And we're frightened. The radio has the fear porn on. And then we work all day at a frickin' desk with no windows and no sunshine. And there's fear everywhere. And the TV, the radio, the grocery aisles. When you're going shopping, make sure you get your shots and make sure you this and it's real low key. It's all theta waves, so it's getting into it's programming. And then you get home and you're exhausted and you want to have a beer and watch TV and veg out. So when someone tells you, that this means this. It's like, oh, thank God. I don't have to research that. I don't have to learn Romanian. I don't have to learn legalese right now because I don't have the bandwidth for it because I'm exhausted in all these other ways all day long. Um, and so what I'm suggesting is what the work that you're doing, you're leading the way. Like you're walking point, as they would say in a war metaphor. You're walking point, and I don't understand everything that you've been through, but I know that I have you as a resource. I know that, and I am going to look on your cases that you filed when I need to, because I'm standing up for myself. I'm sick of, people, organizations that don't sign letters threatening you. Like it's just like enough of terrorism. They think they teach us that, or they condition us from the TV, which I pulled out TV from my house in 2012. I pulled out cable in 2012. So they condition us at every chance they get to be afraid. And I'm over it. And I'm really glad that I found you. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, as an example, is a success letter that you shared. I forget what it was specifically for, but it was $170,000 letter. Yeah. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Okay.
Yeah, I just to say something on what you just said before we
Okay.
move on.
Yeah.
I truly believe, and I think for your audience is unique enough to where I think they can actually agree with this. I don't typically say this. I
Mhm.
will sometimes just for shock value. I truly believe that fear is directly related to misunderstood words.
Yes.
I mean, literally, they are like if you clear up the meanings of the words, you wouldn't have the fear. If you have the fear, it is evidence, direct, non-circumstantial evidence that you have misunderstood words.
Yep. There's something you don't understand. Yep. Yep. There's a word you don't understand.
Because
Yep.
I'm telling you right now, when you understand the rules of civil procedure, you understand the rules of evidence, you understand what citizenship is, you understand the basic functionality of trusts, ownership, possession, titles, which sounds like I just said 9 years worth of studying. But the whole point of what we're trying to do and what I'm trying to do and what our big group is trying to do is to simplify, streamline, and add entertainment into the understanding and application of this information. That's why we've got the pickles and the goofiness and the goofy language and the crazy pictures and the goofy music and the crazy people and all the goofiness. That's why it's there because it's sort of there to try to spice up a dish that people may consider pretty bland, right? So the
Works.
thing is
Works.
that it's when you understand, and we're getting better and better and better at it. For example, today, explaining the things that I'm explaining on this show, it's 10,000 times better than the shows that I was on 2 years ago. You can go and find, I've been on probably 170 or 180 different shows starting in August of 2022. And you can go and you can find almost all of them, unless maybe a channel has been shut down or who knows. But you can find almost every single one of those shows, and you can see the timeline of how things have changed and how the research has changed and how the explanations have changed and how the evidence has changed. And what would have taken somebody, many, many months to try to understand, and they probably wouldn't have even had a great understanding for something, 2 years ago, we can do it now in a matter of a few sentences, minutes, days, hours, and it becomes a much more solid, much more tethered down, realistic, deep understanding very, very, very rapidly at like breakneck speed. So, at the way things are going, within the next year or two, probably, we're going to have all this stuff tied down to the point where we're probably going to start making children's books and stuff. I mean, that's
Mhm.
literally where this stuff is going, right?
That's great.
So the thing is that, the more people that understand this stuff or try to understand this stuff, then now what they can do is that they can turn around and they can start to teach it to their friends, family, online. If they, a lot of many, 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 many people are creating platforms teaching this information now they find it to be as fascinating and as important as I do, and they've decided that they want to shift their entire life over to doing this as a with the rest of their life, which is where I'm at, and I totally understand why someone would do that.
Mhm.
Um, and more and more and more people are going to be doing that as we continue to get better and faster and clearer at explaining it.
Yeah, you're right. There does feel like I sense an exponential kind of growth kind of understanding. It took me 2 years to wrap my head, as an example, it took me 2 years to wrap my head around the tax thing. But when
Well, the
it
thing
clicked,
is that at that time when I was explaining it, it was based upon citizenship and nationality. But the thing is that citizenship and nationality now we're explaining it in a completely different way with this whole state citizen, U.S. citizen thing. And then I have all of the Supreme Court cases and all the quotes and everything all culled down.
right?
So now we have actual real evidence and actual real cases and actual real quotes that prove out these two sets of citizenship in a way where the IRS, they literally can't do a goddamn thing about it. They won't even try.
Yeah, and that's another success example of yours. You
So the
sent
thing
that.
is now the tax situation is so much easier to wrap your head around because the underlying information behind the tax argument is beyond complete.
Yeah, it clicked. It clicked. It clicked. And now I don't think it would take me 2 years for it to click because you have that kind of information and the success example. My very best friend from like childhood, I was telling her about it as I've been going along this journey, and she works for a big corporation, and I told her just file exempt before February, a couple of years in a row now. This February she did it, and she thought she would get a problem. This is how much this movement has made a difference. She got no problem at all. HR didn't even give her a hard time. And she
People
gets
weren't people
vacation.
weren't people weren't having problems even before all this. That's the most hilarious thing. The most hilarious thing is you go back even 20 years ago, even 30, 40 years ago, there were very few people doing it, but there were people. We've had many people come into my movement and be like, "Oh yeah, I filed exempt in 1987, and I've been exempt ever since. I'm celebrating my 47th or whatever year being exempt today, and I've never gotten a single letter. Some people have gotten letters. Some people filed exempt in the 90s or whatever, and then they got a letter, 10 or 12 years later, and then they just ignored it or handled it or whatever, or they got one letter, didn't do anything with it, and then they just never got any more letters. There's also stuff like that too, where they do fishing expeditions
Yeah, exactly.
where
And you got to,
they'll throw out the hooks and see if any of these people who have been exempt for 15 years will bite on it, right? So, but the thing is that one of the things I was going to say earlier that I didn't say is the difference between federal income tax and state tax. At the beginning, I was saying, taxes is the easiest thing in the world, blah, blah, blah. I'm referring specifically to federal income tax. State tax is typically a lot more difficult. It can be done and it can be handled. Um, and then also sales tax is also really pretty easy to handle. For example, I have a lifetime a sales tax exemption on Amazon, and I don't have to do anything at all to be tax exempt for the rest of my life. So if I've been tax exempt on Amazon for probably about 2.5 years now. And
and
when you look at your tax exemption on Amazon, it says start date and then it says expiration date. Under expiration date, it's just a line. I have no expiration date. So um, these are the benefits that are so the fastest benefits to asset protection is a very easy and fast benefit of this information. And when I
well,
say asset protection, I mean protection from court judgments, the IRS, state tax agencies, the Employment Development Department, any sort of like government agency or court order or court judgment,
right.
being able to protect your assets such as your car, your home, whatever cash you have on hand, your securities, your anything like that, that comes down to the building of trusts and the understanding that most ownership in your life is split into two categories, one being legal ownership and one being beneficial ownership, and what that means. And when you start to understand this information, you can start to build your own trusts. They're very easy to build. I teach you how to build them in my free course. And you can start putting together your own asset protection. You don't need to hire an accountant. You don't need to hire a lawyer. In fact, when you start learning this information, you will be firing all of those people and removing them from your life right away because you're going to realize they don't know a fucking thing about anything. That's the first thing you're going to realize. And when you build your first trust and you get your first trust bank account, and then you get rid of your business accounts and you get rid of your personal accounts, that is a basically zero risk benefit to learning the language of legalese, right? Another benefit to learning the language of legalese that you're going to get almost right away, right out the gate with almost no effort is
Love it.
uh, federal income tax. You're not going to be paying that anymore. You're probably not going to have too much trouble with state tax. I know some states don't have it. You're probably not going to have that much trouble with the state tax. There are some people who have a little bit of trouble with the state tax, but overall, pretty easily and most likely without any sort of event, you'll be state tax exempt. And then sales tax is sales tax is it's a pain in the ass to do it all the time on small transactions unless you're on Amazon. Um, Going out to restaurants and being sales tax exempt every single time you eat out, that's pretty annoying and pretty horrible. I don't do that. But any
Mhm.
large purchase, a computer, a motorcycle, a car, a building, anything that is more than even like my mattress, I called up and I said I want sales tax exemption because sales tax in California is quite high, and anything above maybe $1,000 or $2,000, I will call and I will demand a sales tax exemption. Anything below that, I don't because it's just too much of a pain to try to process that all the time. So asset protection and tax relief.
They're great entry ways to exposing yourself to learning the legalese.
You're going to be getting those benefits like right out the gate, right away, within a week, even sometimes for a lot of people. You're going to start to get into those kind of benefits, if not even days. And you're going to be able to actively take action upon those benefits with almost no pushback, kickback, flame, difficulty, or fighting.
So
From
one of the
there, as we go farther,
Mhm.
we start getting into the financials, we start getting into driver's licenses, we start getting into this is now when we're starting to move into uh, shall we say riskier territory. There are greater rewards in these territories, but there are also greater risks. For example, litigation becomes very, very realistic as a necessary tool to operate in a lot of these areas. The fact that you may get pulled over, you may have to interact with a police officer. So you're starting to get into those kinds of subjects. But the first few tiers of all this information, getting into special passports, getting into trusts, getting into asset protection, getting into tax relief, this stuff is so freaking easy. It's just at zero risk that what happens is people start with those things, shall we say. They see that nothing bites them, kills them, kicks them, destroys them, attacks them. That's typically the point when they start to realize that that actually wasn't so bad. Wow, I actually stepped through the hallway and nothing happened. That's actually pretty cool. And then that's typically the point where they start to decide if they want to move through door number two and start
Exactly.
getting into some more advanced things. That's typically the way that this goes down.
Yeah, for me, I'm gaining like my sea legs is how I say it. I'm getting my sea legs. I'm getting comfortable with some things. I'm not at the driver's license thing at all. Like I don't have that bandwidth yet. I don't want to, stand on my rights just yet with the cop and all that. So, but the way I'm doing it is I'm using my passport everywhere I go. And when you buy a bottle of wine at the grocery store here in Pennsylvania, you have to show your ID and they scan your driver's license. Well, I show my passport, and that's how I'm dipping my toe into that. So when I'm ready, I'll cross that bridge. But I started with the taxes, like you said, and that was like immediate. It was so it was wow. I was like, wow, oh my God. And like you mentioned, you sent a letter. There's two examples. I remember one is on your
Oh,
website,
yes.
a revocation of election. You have an example of that to revoke your I guess, exemption status,
I
maybe.
don't I don't recommend that particular activity anymore. So there's something called a revocation of election. You'll find a lot of information on it online. There's a lot of success using it. We also had a lot of success using it for a couple of years, but eventually in my research, I realized that eventually this whole revocation of election thing is not going to work anymore. There was actually some things that I found that actually got me to realize that the revocation of election thing isn't actually what's going on.
That's something else
And
better.
if the IRS ever decides to take action and start shifting things, they can negate the revocation of election. So what I did was I created a new uh, procedure. It's not really even a procedure. It's a glorified change of address. Really, if you think about it, it's the easiest damn thing in the world. It requires basically almost no brain cells to actually administer. It's called the 8822B, and it's basically just a cover letter that's basically 1 page long that has almost no information on it, and a filled out 8822B form, which is literally just a change of address form. Almost. It's like a glorified change of address. And to understand every single thing that's going on the cover letter and the 8822B is extremely, extremely easy. Whereas a revocation of election was typically an affidavit that was anywhere from 15 to 50 pages long, that was typically written by someone else. It was downloaded off the internet, or someone paid someone to help them file it. And the people who were filing it had no clue what was on the papers that were being filed. And that's an issue. That's a big issue, right? So the
Mhm.
8822B, you would need to be you could have the IQ of 60 and you could understand the 8822B.
Okay. One of the things I just want to touch on real quick is that you said you added entertainment into this curriculum, and that is true. Like you, there are some videos where you have me laughing, like you're sitting at the table so long in your mankini, and you just yell like, "I serve your cats," and it's like, okay, all right. So this is great. And that definitely keeps you engaged because you're right. It's not like the most interesting stuff in the world. And this makes it a lot more interesting. Okay, that aside. Um, Back to the $170,000 letter. I forget what that was for. They,
So that was American Express, and this is a long, long, long time ago when I first started learning about a lot of this stuff. And the attorneys said they were going to come after me for the $177,000 I supposedly owed American Express. Um, and I sent them a very convoluted, shitty letter that, looking back on it, it was actually hilarious. It's a
yeah,
really terrible, awful letter. It really didn't specify much of anything in any way. And it really wasn't even accurate legally in almost any way. It was just awful in every respect. Um, and still, even with the extremely poor quality of what I sent them, they decided that they were not going to pursue me in any way, and they sent me a letter to the effect saying that they weren't going to pursue me in any way. And and then it was about a year and a half later when I actually sued them. And then, we've been in that litigation ever since. So that case, the American Express case, is currently in appeals in the Ninth Circuit. So imagine spending $177,000 on a bunch of credit cards, being told you're going to get sued, sending them this bullshit letter. The lawyers run away, and then you keep learning and you keep educating yourself, and then a year and a half later, now you're suing them, and now they're trying to get away from you, and they can't, and they're just totally freaking out, trying to figure out
yeah.
how do we get away from this guy. So
I,
it's a complete reversal of almost everything that you would think. Like, for example, the way that I'm set up legally right now, if I paid taxes, I'd go to prison.
mm-hmm. The way
The
you're set up.
the
Yeah.
way that I'm set up, if I had to turn in my driver's license. If I tried to get a driver's license, or if I still had my driver's license, I'd be going to prison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not in that world yet. But I am ready to walk through the threshold of litigation. Like that's a whole other level, like you're saying. Not only am I sending you this letter and calling your bluff, even though I'm in kindergarten, so to speak, on this level, I'm going to give it a try and I'm going to go there. I'm going to, not only that, but now you you can't fire me. I quit. Now I'm going to sue you too because you're doing these things unlawfully. Um, and that's a whole other level. And I'll get there too. Like I haven't walked through that threshold, but that's one I want to look into. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Um, you know, when you get to this level of where I'm at, it's a totally different. The Ninth Amendment becomes your driver's license.
Mm,
The Ninth
yeah.
Amendment is my driver's license.
Right.
The Ninth Amendment's not available for U.S. citizens. That's why U.S. citizens need to go and get a driver's license from the DMV. They don't have the Ninth Amendment. They don't have the driver's license. A state citizen, which is what I am entirely,
Hmm.
uh, they have the Ninth Amendment, and then if they say that the Ninth Amendment is their driver's license, then in that moment the Ninth Amendment becomes their driver's license.
Yeah. And then you have to be educated enough, know the language enough to say that and know what you're saying to
Yeah,
someone.
and then when you start going down that path too, um, all of the street signs all become optional. And when I say that, I mean um, there is no penalties, there is no tickets, there is no anything
Right.
involving, let's say, for example, speed limit. So in your mind, what happens is a speed limit sign becomes a recommended speed sign.
Hmm.
So for me, legally, a speed limit sign is a recommended speed sign.
Hmm.
A stop sign is a recommended to stop sign
Right.
legally.
Yeah. Understood. Um, One other thing I like wrote a note about is the flip side of taking the language a little bit further. Like, learning legalese like you would French or Romanian. I want to highlight too the mantras that we're conditioned to believe. Like, there's two things you have to do: pay taxes and die. Okay, that's a mantra. And people believe that. Um, you can't fight City Hall. Like they just drum it in your head. You can't fight City Hall. You can't fight City Hall. You can't fight City Hall. Well, that's essentially, I feel, what Brandon is doing, showing you.
You can get up to a point where you can crush City Hall with like barely even enough effort to like smoke a cigarette. I mean, you can get up to that level with this kind of information nowadays with everything available and like, I don't know, maybe 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, I was thinking a couple months. And they know that. And that's why they float these mantras. This is words, this is NLP, neuro linguistic programming, this is magic, this is spells, spelling. Um, they're they're essentially the same, if you want to get down to the essence of them. And mantras like, 6 feet apart, trust the science, you can't fight City Hall, you only have to do two things: pay taxes and die. Here's another one: only a fool is his own lawyer.
Oh yeah, that's uh the absolute worst thing you can do by far is take on an attorney. I mean, that is you're better off, and I'm not kidding at all when I say this. You are literally better off playing Russian roulette. I mean, I am dead fucking serious. Put a bullet in a fucking revolver, spin it, click it, put $100,000 on the table, and play that with somebody else, and see if you can walk away with the pot. You're better off with that than you are hiring an attorney. And I could go on. I could talk for an hour and a half about the legal repercussions. Basically, to say an hour and a half in one sentence is when you
Yeah.
take on an attorney, you become property of the court,
Yep.
like a box or a computer or a phone or a keyboard. You become inanimate physical property of the court.
like you had taught in the course, you're ward of the court. You're basically,
Yes.
yeah, okay. Like an invalid, like you're not of
You're,
sound mind.
it's called an infant or person of unsound mind is the
Yeah,
definition of a client. If you look up the word
yeah,
client, the legal definition, it's 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 one who takes on a lawyer, and then the second sentence is clients are wards of the court, and then you look up the definition of ward of the court, and the definition is an infant or person of unsound mind. And essentially, in a nutshell, when you take on an attorney, what you're entering into is basically a conservatorship, kind of like the nightmare that Britney Spears went through.
mhm. And Wendy Williams now?
It's the
Yeah,
same, it's that same functionality, but what happens is they kind of don't really even understand that themselves.
yeah,
I'm not sure. It's a combination of nefarious intent with just pure ignorance because
yeah.
it's just blows my mind how many attorneys don't even know this information. So they may act as though it's not a conservatorship, at least partially, and the judge may allow that sort of behavior. But in actual fact, it is essentially a conservatorship.
And that definition comes from, is it Black's Law or
The definition of client comes from Corpus Juris Secundum. I think it's 4 CJS 7 or 4 CGS 3. If you go to my Williams and Williams law firm website and you go to the questions and answers section, the whole beginning part, which goes on and on for probably 2 or 3 pages, is talking all about this information. And in there, I give you all the sources of all the different things and definitions.
okay, great. Yeah, and it's words like that and what you had mentioned in one of your course cases, a newly coined mantra that I imagine is going to make its way into the mainstream because you're 100,000 people strong already. Vapor money theory. We've got a new mantra, vapor money.
Yeah,
I
that's
know
my
that they smeared the word sovereign. Um, I didn't know that was a bad word, but I know now that it's a tip off to, the system that you're learning about this stuff. Now I hear vapor money theory.
there's two main buzz terms. Buzz term number one is sovereign citizen. Buzz term number two is vapor money theory. Those are the two big ones that they're using on us now. They never define them. They're very careful. And
Mhm.
that's what I'm starting to do is I'm starting to push them against the wall and force them to define these things, which they're just like absolutely flat out refusing to do. It's actually hilarious. The term sovereign citizen is something for a long, long, long time. For most of the time I've had my platform, I was very angry about, very strongly against, and I rallied against it very strongly. Recently, because of the amount of court cases I started reading, especially court cases at the Supreme Court level in the 1800s, what happened was in this country, and this is like brand new research for me. So what happened was is we have something called the Magna Carta, which is from like 1215. And essentially the people rebelled against the king and forced the king to basically like extend all of his powers into like the group. So like now instead of the king being the center of all power, it's like us as a whole group, including our king, all have that sovereignty, that sovereign ability, that sovereign power, right? In the 1800s, there's so many times where someone like Roger Taney, who was the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for many, many years, I think he was the fifth Chief Justice in our country, Mr. Miller, John Marshall, a bunch of really, really, really eminent, in fact, probably some of the most eminent Supreme Court justices we've ever had since the dawn of our country. They talk about the Magna Carta a lot, and it was something recently that kind of got me like, what the hell? What is this Magna Carta thing?
Mhm.
Then in cases like Dred Scott versus Sanford, Mr. Taney, during the opinion, he's talking about like how citizens and we the people mean the same thing, and they make up and form the sovereignty. And I've been going down these rabbit holes of like, what are they talking about? Make up and form the sovereignty. So from 1776 until 1873, we had only one type of citizenship. It was called a state citizen, and it was based upon the state that you're in, basically, without going any deeper. There's more to it a little bit, but that's good enough. Californian, New Yorker, Texan, New Hampshireite. Indiana is Hoosier. Indiana is a little different. Uh, Idahoan, I believe. Kansan, Kansan, I believe is. Anyways, you get the point.
Yeah.
So during that time period, the way that the country was structured was the political body that made up the sovereignty was the same. It was connected to the king by his prerogative. You'll see that exact wording in a case in the appeals, New York appeals, where the chief justice in that case is talking about how the sovereignty of the state it comes from the king by his prerogative, and what he's referring to in that is the Magna Carta. So what happened was is the power of the king was extended into the society of that society through the Magna Carta, and then that is an English thing that happened in the English culture, and then that came all the way down through 500 years, and then we came from England as America. So the basis of the structure of each individual sovereign state with its sovereignty is the group based off of the same idea of the Magna Carta. So the Magna Carta was based off of King, I forget which king. Magna Carta was the King John of England, right? So basically, if you were to think of it illustratively, imagine King John of England and then take all of his powers and prerogatives and then just think of it like a bubble and then just expand that bubble out to include all of the people that were part of that kingdom. That same idea is how all of the individual 50 states of the Union in America operate. And that's why you have to have things like a grand jury indictment. A grand jury indictment is a member of the sovereignty who has the same powers of King John individually, but it's other members of that same sovereignty that also have all of the powers of King John, 23 of them all coming together and saying, no, this is sovereignty, sovereign people here, a sovereign person here. 23 of them are saying no and pushing that person out of that sovereignty bubble. That is essentially the illustration of everything that's going on in America in the original America. What happened was is that after the U.S. citizen category was created for the released Negro slaves, none of anything I just explained to you has absolutely anything to do with the U.S. citizen category.
Yeah.
Everything I just explained to you, every single word I just uttered out of my mouth has absolutely nothing to do with U.S. citizens. It only has to do with state citizens, which by definition, you had to be a free white person to be a state citizen, even to this day, by the way.
Mm.
So that's why you're seeing all this white people stuff on a lot of my posts on social media. But the thing is that the government isn't even structured anymore. Everyone in the government, the governors of the states, the president, everyone's a U.S. citizen. So the thing is that if you're a black man and you say you're white and you try to become a state citizen, there's nothing in the society or the government that has the political ability to tell you no, because a U.S. citizen cannot adjudicate anything involving a state citizen. State citizens are way higher on the scale than a U.S. citizen. It's like imagine like some heroin addict in a cell who's serving life for murder trying to judge some like huge like really successful celebrity millionaire billionaire. Like imagine like some drunk heroin fuck in a cage trying to judge Keanu Reeves.
Right.
You would laugh. It's
State citizen.
hilarious.
Yeah,
So
I
that
did.
same idea is a U.S. citizen attempting to give judgment to a state citizen. Not
Yeah.
only is it absolutely ridiculous and hilarious in a social level, on a legal level, it's 1,000 times more ridiculous. It can't be done. It is a complete physical impossibility. So, for example, if you type it in the internet right now, are juries composed of U.S. citizens? Do you have to be a U.S. citizen to be on a jury? The answer is yes. So the thing is that the way I'm set up legally, a jury, you cannot form a jury for anything that may come up involving me at all. They can't form a jury for me
Because you're a state citizen.
because I'm a state citizen, and they can't form a grand jury indictment on me either because the grand juries are also all U.S. citizens. I
Wow.
cannot be indicted. It is a physical impossibility to indict me.
Yeah. Yeah, just breaking it down, you wouldn't think that a state citizen outranks, I'll just use that word, outranks, so to speak, a US citizen. You
A
would
state citizen is the original citizenship
right.
that was here from 1776 until 1873. It's still here. It's been here ever since. But in 1873, there was a secondary class that was introduced. And now, over the past 150 years, everyone thinks they're this other secondary class that was introduced in 1873.
So I want to touch on that too, because that's just obscuring it. That's,
Yes.
obscuring the truth, which is a main modality from of narcissisms with narcissists, which I deal with a lot with my clients.
I want to be clear on something with this.
Yeah.
If you read the slaughterhouse cases, if you go on Google Scholar and type in slaughterhouse cases, it's not very hard to read. It's actually a very easy case to read.
Okay.
Samuel Freeman Miller had been trying to work toward freeing the slaves for like 25 years. And his opinion is very clear. He cared very much about the slaves and the released Negro slaves. He wanted to see them. He cared a lot about America. He sat on over 5,000 cases. He died in the fucking chair.
Mm.
So I want to in 1890. So I want to be clear, there's nothing nefarious at all about Mr. Miller and the opinion of the slaughterhouse cases from April 14th, 1873. The problem is that somehow it just got lost in translation and no one ever read it. And it just never got read. And it seems to me, Mr. Miller, recently I started reading a lot of the cases that he sat on between 1873 and his death in 1890. And he's talking about state citizen, U.S. citizen, the differences, and you have a state citizen, and they're trying to use the 14th Amendment, and they can't because that's for federal citizens only, and they're a state citizen, and they're a woman, and there's this one really big case where it was a woman, and she was trying to get into the bar so she could practice law, and she tried to use the 14th Amendment. And they said, and Mr. Miller said, no, you're a state citizen. You can't use the 14th Amendment. I mean, there's so much here where he's so clear and he's going back and forth and all this. But then he died in 1890. And he seemed to be like the guy.
Mhm.
Um, so it just seems like after 1890, everyone just kind of never read it and forgot. And by I have evidence. If you look at the Army Training Manual 2025, which was written in 1928, you can see right in the Army Training Manual that the words of Mr. Miller and the differences between state and U.S. citizenship had been completely gone by 1928. I mean, completely gone. I mean, to the point where state citizenship, nobody even knew it even existed. It wasn't even something that even existed basically by 1928. So this classification, which is the classification of the original government, and it is the classification that was here from 1776 till 1873 and beyond, was basically just lost. It was
Yeah.
forgotten. It's always been here. It's still here legally. It's just no one knows it's there and no one knows it's an option. And the most horrifying part of it is That is the original American classification.
Right.
So a
Yeah.
US citizen isn't even legally an American.
Yeah. Yeah. I know there's a lot I have to learn about this. Yeah. We all do.
The reason why a US citizen pays taxes is because they're not an American.
Mhm.
People walk around, oh, why do I have to have a driver's license? I have a right to travel. You have a lot of people talking about that. Why do I need to pay taxes? I have the right to pursue happiness and freedom and the Declaration of Independence. Why can't I say what I want to say on Facebook? I have the right for free speech. Why do I need a concealed carry permit to carry a
Yep.
pistol? I have the right to bear arms, shall not be infringed, the Second Amendment. The problem is, no, you don't, motherfucker. No, you don't, because you say and identify as a US citizen.
It's all words.
That's why.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like that you highlight it feels like Samuel Miller had good intentions and was devoted to what he was doing. And I like that you highlight that and underscore that because I don't feel like that's the case a lot of the times now. Um,
If you read Mr. Miller's background and you read what he did to make it all the way to the Supreme Court, you read the slaughterhouse cases, and then you read some of the cases he talked about after the slaughterhouse cases, where he goes into all this in more and more detail, handling real issues that are popping up to the Supreme Court. You'll see the guy had a freaking heart of gold, and he was absolutely brilliant.
mhm. Okay, I'll check that out. I mean, I don't plan on stopping learning until I croak. So I'm going to learn and learn and learn as much as I can. And I'm definitely in this. I got a list of priorities. And like you said, I'm going to recap what you said. I made a note like the easiest ways to learn this, dip your toe in, get familiar, gain your sea legs is federal tax. That's one of the easiest ways.
Oh God, federal! I'm telling you, I swear to God, federal taxes is, and I don't even feel like I'm even exaggerating this anymore. I used to laugh and think I mean, smoking a cigarette is literally as difficult as ending federal income tax.
So how would someone where would they go to your contract killer course 2.0 or they go to your website and see some of the go ahead.
Yeah, you're not even gonna, by the time you understand the basic terminology, you're gonna understand a resident alien, you're gonna understand a non-resident alien, you're gonna understand a US citizen, you're gonna understand the different tax forms and what they mean. I mean, it's just gonna become so easy. It's just not even. It's like driving your car around is harder than, I mean, I'm telling you. I mean, rolling out of bed, I don't even getting a shower maybe would be as about as difficult. I really can't even, because sometimes I get up, I don't want to fucking get up, and it's like it's almost like fuck. It's almost like okay, it's not even that hard, really. I mean,
No, it's not that hard.
there's mornings where like I'd rather not for a couple of hours, and it's literally taxes are harder, or I'm sorry, taxes are easier than when I'm feeling like that. So even getting up in the morning, it's like, well, shit. Sometimes actually taxes is even easier than that. So taxes is like I can't even. I don't know, eating a ham sandwich, smoking a cigarette. I'd
I
say that's
know,
probably
seriously.
like the level that federal income tax, something like that, I'd say.
Yeah. I know. I did it. I know. And you're not exaggerating. Uh
It's
yeah,
not necessarily pleasurable. It's not like sex or something. It's not like you're not going to be at the end and be like, oh, that was fantastic. I feel great. I mean, you are going to feel great,
you do. Yeah, you do.
but
You
it's
do.
like in terms of it, the actual actions of it, it's actually very uneventful, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and you know what? I don't mean to be like, I'm not judging people because, I'm meeting them where they're at. But when I hear people I love talking about like no tax on tips and things like that, I'm like, you don't have to pay tax on anything. Like I want to say, like you guys got to contract.
Taxes on tips is it's such an irrelevant
Yeah,
conversation. It's
I know.
like I don't even know how to even. It's just so a tax on tips. I mean, it's like saying, I don't even know. It's so
Let me think.
insignificant. Like I can't even think of something that could be
A
that
metaphor.
insignificant. Like I can't even stretch or like bury my mind far enough to think of something so fucking insignificant. I don't even know, like, I don't know. It's just like it's so insignificant and ridiculous to even waste the body is an engine an oxygen carbon engine. How much how like what does it take? 1 calorie to even listen to those words? I don't know. Like it's not
I
even
have one. I
worth.
have a metaphor. I have a metaphor. It's like selling ice to a Eskimo.
Yeah, I mean
Right?
it's just like it's not even worth half a calorie to even listen to the bullshit. It's not even worth. I, I don't. I literally can't even think of something that could be so insignificant. I really just.
It's besides the point. It's so beside the point. It's irrelevant, like you say. No tax on overtime. Yeah, no tax on overtime. If you're doing these things and you learn, you put in the time, wouldn't you say that learning this is worth putting in that time? I didn't want to do it either. Like you learn a new language, to use your metaphor, learning Romanian, learning French. Learning all this is learning a new language. When you learn that and you understand it and you feel it and you're up underneath it, and you get it and it clicks, it's totally worth it. And you hear the sentence, no tax on tips, you're like, whatever. Like you said, you just keep it moving because
Just
it
turn it
doesn't
off.
even
It's like,
think.
oh my God, these guys are like 9 trillion floor. I can't even, it's like, it's like children, and they're like on the playground and they're talking about something that doesn't even make sense, and they're like having a good time. And to them, it's like fun to talk about gibberish. And you can't even, then you sit there and you're like, all right, let me try to go back in time to when I was 5 years old, playing in the sand and talking
Right,
about
right.
gibberish. And the thing is that it's kind of fun because you're thinking there, oh yeah, I remember back then, it's gibberish and la la la, and you'd say some stupid shit doesn't make any sense, but the other kids seem to understand it. And we seem to be having a good time. So, like, it is interesting to think about, and it is kind of like a cool little, like, smiley little, like, reminiscent kind of thing. But then you realize that, like, I don't want to go 587,000 floors down on the elevator. I don't want to fall unconscious in the elevator. It's like Goku in Dragon Ball Z when he's traveling in that spaceship, and he's traveling in that spaceship for like 3 or 4 years to get to that like other planet or whatever it was. Like the elevator ride that it would take to go down to no tax on tips. It's like a 4 year elevator ride. It's like it's like what in
We're on the
the
elevator for
fuck?
years.
Yeah, it's like what the hell are you even talking about? Now I want to be clear. I don't think Trump's a bad guy. I don't really.
Right,
I just don't care. That's the real thing. It's just I'm not going to listen to him or anyone else.
right.
If I have to take a 4 year elevator ride to come down and listen to you, brother, I ain't going to be there.
Yeah, I'm not going.
That's the simplicity of it. I'm sorry.
Right.
It ain't going to be Biden. It ain't going to be Obama. It ain't going to be Bush. It ain't going to be Clinton. It ain't going to be Trump. And it ain't going to be anybody else.
And I think that's important. I think that is a whole other energy that I'm understanding now that I really didn't quite get, say 2019. That, it's not this guy or that guy or this guy or that guy. It's, we need to freaking learn. And if
It's I ain't getting in an elevator for 4 years. That's what it is. I just ain't doing it.
I don't blame you. I'm not
It's
getting
not
out.
happening.
Yeah,
Where I'm at, if you were to go in the elevator from that level and go up the elevator for 4 years, where I'm at is if I pay any taxes, I go straight to prison. Any
right.
taxes.
That's a whole other level.
If I sign a W-9 tax form right now, I am going to prison for up to 3 years.
Right. Okay.
That is where I'm at. That's 4 years up the elevator.
Okay. I'm not going there yet.
There's no discussion. There's nothing to talk about. If you do try to push me into it in any way, it's an 18 USC 1622 subornation of perjury charge. You can go to prison for up to 5 years for attempting to coerce me to commit a felony.
Yeah.
So you tell me once, and I, oh, hey, listen, if I sign this, I'm going to prison. You keep pushing it, I'm putting your ass in prison. That's 4 years up the elevator.
That's 4 years up the elevator.
And everyone just fucks off real fast. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. And that's like when you counter sue, when you're suing, you know, American Express, that's another level.
Yes.
That's before 4 years up the elevator though.
That's
That
4 years
is
up the
like,
elevator because you're running up. So with the SBA, I got $200,000 during COVID for an SBA 7A loan. I
hmm
never made even one single payment, and now I'm suing them for
hmm
non-performance.
hmm Yeah. Can you tell me more about that?
When you sign the original promissory note, it's the same thing as a Federal Reserve note. A Federal Reserve note is also a promissory note. So you
Right.
start to go down the
Negotiable
rabbit
in-
hole. You start going down the rabbit hole of what really is a promissory note, what really is money, what really is currency. It's a promissory note, or currency in our country is defined as negotiable instruments. Negotiable instruments divide into two subclasses: an unconditional promise to pay and an unconditional order to pay. Promissory note. So these things here, these are promissory notes. So when you realize that these are the exact same thing as your mortgage or your credit card transactions, they're all promissory notes. Now, it's like every single time I use my credit card, let's say this is my credit card. This is actually one of my passports that I sell and make for my own nation. But let's say I have a little credit card reader and I go, beep, I just manufactured an unconditional promise to pay, which is called a promissory note. That promissory note has the full value of a Federal Reserve note in law. So if I promise to pay $6 for a coffee, why, at the end of the month, do I need to now send them another $6 in promises to pay called Federal Reserve notes? You already got $6 in promissory notes when I transacted the goddamn thing. So now, at the end of the month, why are you asking me for six more promissory notes when you already got the six you needed when I transacted the original credit card transaction to begin with? It makes no sense.
And you break this down in your course, the Contract Killer 2.0 course, with the UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, where you break down, tell me if I'm right on this, on top of my head memory, um, that money, I think you got the definition of money from the UCC. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
The
But the
most
money,
basic definition of money is silver coins that are
right.
371.25 grains of what's called fine silver, which is defined as 0.999 or above. That is
Mhm.
the legal definition of money. An unconditional promise to pay, a Federal Reserve note, is not money. UCC 3 is very clear about that in 3-102. They're negotiable instruments, and some people who are involved in this, they go, oh well, Brandon, funny money and fiat money. We've had negotiable instruments operating in the society as cash. I think the farthest back I've ever read any court cases is probably 1829, and I'm sure it was probably that way even before that point. So our country has always had negotiable instruments. The negotiable instruments, as far as I know, for most of our entire country have been able to travel through the country as currency, but they weren't the official currency of our country until 1933.
Till 1933.
Before that point, it was silver coins were essentially the bedrock of the term money. And
Not
then
gold.
and then gold was clarified and added, and it went through some adjustments, and gold has been a part of our definition of money for most of the time that we've been, but gold has kind of been a little more on off, a little more clarified, a little more, because the in 1933 part of that was called the Gold Abrogation Act. So silver coins really is the bedrock of the definition of the term money.
That's interesting because in the Bible it says silver.
Yes. And that's probably part of the reason why, because that's, that would make perfect sense. But Gold coins, yes, and if you look anywhere, you'll go see gold and silver coins. Yes, yes, yes. But on a more basic, intrinsic, and simplified level, it's you could just say silver coins is essentially the bottom of the staircase. That's as far down. Like if you had a shovel and they hit the very bottom, it'd be silver coins, 371.25 grains of fine silver.
Okay. And so the $20 bill in your pocket is a promissory note.
It's not a dollar and it's not a bill, actually, legally.
Uh,
So
yeah.
it's a promissory note. You would say promissory note, you would say currency, because the definition of the word currency does embrace notes, bonds, evidences of debt. So you could say currency. Currency would be a legal term you could use to describe a Federal Reserve note. Promissory note, note, negotiable instrument, security. A Federal Reserve note is all the same shit they're throwing around all over Wall Street. It's the same exact thing.
Mhm,
They
mhm.
don't think it is. They don't know this. The amount of guys I've talked to who have been hedge fund operators or they've worked for banks or even vice presidents of banks and they don't even know what a goddamn negotiable instrument is absolutely hilarious. This
So
area of negotiable instruments is an area of extreme ignorance. When I say extreme, I went on Cal Callahan's show called The Great Unlearn. Our
Mhm.
show became the biggest show he's ever done by far, and his biggest guest up to that point was Lance Armstrong. Came on two times. I crushed Lance Armstrong like 4x the stats of his shows. Um, I didn't realize the first time I went to go see Cal for our show, Cal Callahan is like a freaking billionaire. He's a hedge fund financial god, and he's basically retired after like a 25, 30 year career as like an ultra mega finance guy. I didn't even know this the first time I went to go see him for a show, and he doesn't even know what a negotiable instrument is.
Hmm. Fascinating. I saw that show. I watched that show.
Yeah, so Cal Callahan to me is probably one of the coolest people I've ever had the pleasure to meet because the amount of self confidence
Yeah.
that you have to be a 30-year ultra mega finance billionaire and have a guy named one stupid fuck come on your show and tell you that you didn't even know the basics of anything ever in your entire career. You got to have a pretty solid I didn't know he was the finance god.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what the guy did. I just saw his big
Yeah.
mansion and I just started on the show and we just started talking. And I didn't even realize that he's this financial god. I didn't even have any clue. So it just shows that he has a tremendous emotional bandwidth and he has a really
Yeah.
strong self-certainty. And he's very calm within his own world and space. And he has a very small ego that is out of
Yeah.
control. His ego is very much under his control. He's very because for someone like that to have the kind of conversation we had is just unbelievable.
And from my work, the frame that I look at it in, I talk about the glacier of change. It's behaviors, beliefs, identity, and then deeper than that is cultural, ancestral, and karmic. And a lot of the times when someone's beliefs are being challenged or their identity, specifically like Cal's identity is this whole thing, they get cognitive dissonance and they'll do anything. Their ego will do anything to keep them from opening their mind to that. So yeah, he is seems quite evolved from what you're saying because he was able to consider that and not rock his identity.
That's
That's
correct. That's correct. And I think that's probably part of the reason why it became such a viral show. It's the second most viral show I've ever been on. The number one most viral show I've ever been on is when I was on Mission Daily with Stephanie Postles. That one's got like 150 or 170,000 views, something like that on
and it's
YouTube.
only going to go up. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I said, I found you at least a year and a half ago, maybe more, and originally on YouTube. And then I found you. I looked for you on Instagram. I we were connected on TikTok, but then it seemed like that was a different person. It's not you anymore. I don't know what happened. I don't know. I
I
lost.
started getting a lot of scammers pretending to be me trying to sell God knows what. That's become
Oh,
a real issue over the past
yeah,
couple of years. It's only gotten worse. So
yeah.
um, I don't really do much with it because I don't really think there's much I can do, and it's just going to get worse as it gets bigger. So I'm not really going to focus in on that.
Yeah. And the things like I go when I look for your stuff, actually, when I start to get rocked a little bit, when I get nervous, uh, I'm like, I gotta listen to a Brandon video to get my mind right again. Like to remind myself like what we're, and I will.
That's
I'll go in the
hilarious.
car and I'll put I mean it. So when you were talking about the SBA thing, for example, they sent you a bill, which is a negotiable, I call it a bill. The little coupon
Those
payment,
are
right?
bills. Those are bills.
Right.
But
Okay.
but but this isn't necessarily a bill.
Right. But they're both promises to pay. Or no, wait. They're both promissory notes.
No, a Federal Reserve note is a promissory note, an unconditional promise to pay. The bill is an unconditional order to pay, which is the
Okay.
secondary class.
Okay. And
Negotiable
they're both
instruments are two classes: unconditional promise and unconditional order.
okay. So what would have been right for me to say is they're both negotiable instruments.
Yeah, the word bill is a little bit more of an English term referring to like the Bill of Exchange Act. The in the Uniform Commercial Code, which is the essentially the commercial law for the United States of America on the state level, the correct term would be draft.
Hmm. So one
So
of the
so
things that,
when you get a bill in the mail from your utility company, your credit card company, the legal term for what that is it's a draft.
okay. Okay. And you got a draft, you got a bill from the Small Business Association Administration.
Yeah. Well, they started calling me and annoying me, and that's why I sued them. I wasn't going to sue them. I was going to leave them alone. If they never called me, I would have never sued them.
You know what? I'm signing up for the Pacer account because I want to see what you're doing over there with that. And I
That one's
know,
pretty fun. That one's definitely some of my best work for sure.
yeah.
I'm the litigation stuff is definitely a learn while you go situation, big time. I mean, I am completely alone with no lights walking through a dark forest, pretty much by myself with Joey
Like
by
I
my
said,
side. So
you're walking point.
it's
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it's been a rough go, but I feel like I feel like maybe around a month or two ago was the first time I started being like, I'm kind of getting the hang of this. So yeah, it's been a slow process for sure.
And I'm glad you have Joey too, because I watched the video. I forget, I think it was, I don't know if he hosted it or you hosted it. Either way, he talked about credit cards and his credit score. And that's a whole other thing I want to get into. And I know you trademarked your name. There's all these things, like you talked about trust, taking your assets and putting them in trust for asset protection. That was one of the things I like to give my clients and my, audience action steps. And so the easiest thing, like what would have helped me to get started sooner, or to feel like, it's okay if I don't figure this all out in a day or a week or a month or a year or whatever. And so that's why I like that you mentioned, well, I would tell them, get the contract killer course, go on Brandon's website, sign up for his emails. That's how you get it. It's free. And then you mentioned federal taxes, which is in that course. And then you mentioned asset protection. It's in that course.
Yeah, real quick, I want to stop you
Yeah.
just one
Yeah,
second.
yeah,
The
yeah.
best thing is to sign up for the free course, which you can sign up for on either onestupidfuck.com. You can go here to 2.0 contract killer course. Um, and uh, the other things that I think would be really good for people to read. It's pretty intense and
Hmm.
it's a lot and it's kind of crazy,
Hmm.
but how do you go up the elevator 4 years worth of elevator in like 3 hours? You're going to read a treatise on the word person at williamsandwilliamslawfirm.com, and you're also going to read driving versus traveling at williamsandwilliamslawfirm.com.
Okay, so that's okay.
So those are rough though. That's like top speed shit. That's like you're going up the elevator, the 4 year elevator, and we're trying to get you up that 4 year elevator in like 3 hours.
Right,
So
right.
just
It's
keep in
drinking
mind
from a
if your
fire hydrant.
skin If your skin is tearing off your body, it might be a bit much. But the thing is that that's what this is for sure.
That's right. Yeah, you know what? Like I said, I've been following you. I've been listening to you every day pretty much for a couple months now, and I haven't even read those things yet.
Yeah, it's we're I'm trying. The treatise on the word person is the first time, in my opinion, that that it's my first attempt at trying to get someone up the 4-year elevator in 2 hours.
Okay.
And according to a lot of the feedback that I've gotten, it's pretty effective at doing that. It really is the back door for real.
And that's important. So that's how important it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I should prioritize that.
Yeah, that one. And then I had a live event that I did in Austin, Texas, sold out
Oh, that's
event.
right.
Day two is the day where I do the presentation on the treatise of the word person. I just uploaded it maybe 3 days ago. So you'll see an important note at the top of the treatise that was just added. And it's a link that goes directly to that portion of day two where I do the presentation on the treatise. So if you want the fastest route up the elevator,
Hmm.
that's also very enjoyable and very easy and fun, and it's not any reading. It's just listening to me talk about it and give a presentation where I'm doing jokes and I'm like screaming and all this kind of stuff. It's like a very intense,
Entertaining.
entertaining type. That's the one. But the thing is that presentation covers maybe half or so of the treatise. So you have to still read the whole treatise. But by the time you finish the presentation, you're already going to have like the motivation or the momentum or the hey, I actually really understand this. It's going to be it's going to be a lot easier for you to like roll into the treatise and get all the way through it if you watch the presentation first.
Yes. Was this the at the Dave Asprey event?
No, that's a totally separate. So I just got back a couple weeks ago. I was a speaker at the Dave Asprey biohacking convention, which is just such a prestigious, insane event that I just said
Yeah.
yes, even though I didn't even really know what I was getting myself into. I didn't really understand that stuff or really know that demographic, but I showed up. I did the speech. It was very good. I was very honored. You know, for someone who's just this kind of young white guy who calls himself one stupid fuck, and most people think he's just this weirdo sovereign citizen fringe fucker on the internet, for him to be invited to the Dave Asprey biohacking convention to speak, that's insane. That's like absolutely insane. So
It's fantastic.
it's like, uh, yeah, hell yeah, I'll be there. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't even really need the details. Just tell me where to be and I'll be there. So that's kind of what it was. Yeah. But that's not, I didn't even record that. I didn't even record that speech.
Okay.
It
Okay.
was the event before that. It was my event with Cameron Wilson, where
Okay.
it was me, Cameron Wilson, and Joey Kimbrough were the three speakers, and that was a sold out event in Austin, Texas, and that was at the very end of April.
For like two
Um,
or 3 days. I
it
think I
was three
remember
days, 3 days.
about that. Yeah, I would, I would have came, but I couldn't, but I have it on my radar for next time you do it. So that is a video that's not part of your course. It would just be found on your YouTube channel.
YouTube channel, and then the link is on the treatise. Yeah, it's not on the course. There's a
Okay.
lot of things that aren't on the course. The 2.0 course was released in August of 24.
Right.
And then there are two post course videos that are really important. Honestly, they're probably almost more important than a lot of what's in the course. Those were done in like November and December. And then everything since December of '04 has just been on like videos and social media posts. And I'm on shows. You know, I go on a lot of shows. I go on 2 or 3 shows a week typically. Um,
Hmm.
so it took me 2 years to do the 2.0 course from the 1.0 course. So hopefully I'll do the 3.0 course, you know, within a year or two from the 2.0. And it's going to be like a whole new world, a whole new level with all new stuff. The 1.0 to the 2.0 was like a 4-year elevator ride in difference. And I would like the 2.0 to the 3.0 to also be like a 4 year elevator ride in difference.
Yeah. I want to say that when I signed up, I made a little folder for you for your emails. And I would just drag and drop them there because I knew it was going to be like I said, drinking from a fire hydrant. So I just drug and dropped all those there. And when I was ready, that's when I started going through the course one by one. So anybody that is interested, don't beat yourself up or get upset if you're not watching, and getting it right away. It's a lot. And Brandon, why did you? Because it's free. So what is?
This treatise, you're going to see this treatise is massive in terms of that problem.
Okay.
Massive,
All right.
massive. All the people who fell off the horse before
Mhm.
the treatise
Mhm.
should seriously try again with the treatise. The treatise is a whole new me coming up and swinging at the ball with the bat. It's a whole new ball game. It's a whole new presentation. It's a whole new style. There's a lot of historical elements. We go on historical adventures together. It's like something out of the freaking Magic School Bus, the cartoon from 20 years ago. It's a
Yeah.
whole different it's a whole different ball game, I'm telling you.
Okay, so if you fell off the horse or you're discouraged in any way, check out the treatise
Yes.
and get a shot in the arm there, like of adrenaline to get going again.
And new people can go from 0 to 5 billion miles an hour in like 3 seconds with the treatise too.
I like the metaphors because I know you like your motorcycle, right? Is it the motorcycle you like?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard you talking about that. What led you to do this? You did this for free. Blood, sweat, and tears. Why?
Uh, because well, I know I'll get taken care of, and I have been taken care of. It's not like but I do it for free um, having millions of dollars doesn't matter if you don't have your country anymore. Because if the country, it's like Venezuela, everyone who had millions of dollars before hyperinflation, it didn't mean anything. If you worked 30 years and you built a Microsoft and you
Hmm.
had your big mansion and your Rolls Royces and your all your things and your private jets, the second that hyperinflation hit, it's all gone. All of that was gone. That lifestyle was gone. The business was gone. The clients were gone. The bank accounts were gone. The investments were gone. Everything was gone. So I don't see the point. Um, I
For
li
love of the country, it sounds like.
Yeah, I live a great life. I've got no complaints. I'm in a really nice apartment. It is. People say, oh, you're not even in a house. House annoying. You got to fix it. You got to clean it. You got to mow fucking lawns. Oh my God, no, please God, I'm not interested. I don't want to paint. I don't care. If a pipe breaks, don't even call me. I don't even want to know about it. You know what I mean? I
I
am
do.
not that kind of person. The idea of having to mow a lawn, which is hilarious coming from a guy who was raised in Indiana, where mowing a lawn is a religion in Indiana. The idea of these little plants that grow out of the ground that have no purpose and you have to trim them.
Right.
Why do you need to trim them? There's no point to it. Why? Who cares? They're little plants. They don't grow any food. They don't do anything. It's like why even have them? It to me it's just crazy. It smells nice and it's kind of therapeutic. Yes, I understand that, and that's why I think people in Indiana are so into it. And you can have your beer and you
Right.
can have your shirt off. And I used to mow the
Right.
lawn. I used to mow the
Bye.
lawn every week, and I enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. Uh, it's therapy, but there's a lot of things you can do that are therapy. I mean, I consider my motorcycle to be therapy. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong or evil because I'll have all of Indiana coming down on top of me by saying that lawns are bad because it's the religion of Indiana. It's the Bible Belt. The Bible of Indiana ain't Christianity. It's lawn care. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, I just, for me, I just don't. I just don't get it. I mean, me and Joey Kimbrough laugh about this. We always joke because he's in Kokomo, Indiana, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm out here just looking at my lawn." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, I
Mhm.
know." I just got done mowing my lawn. I'm out here having a cigar. I know, I know, I know. It's always lawn this, lawn that. I mean, he sued somebody because they stepped on his lawn. He didn't like it.
Wow.
So yeah, that's Indiana for real, like for real,
That's a
for real.
whole vibe. The
But
vibe on
that's
vibe.
I don't have anything wrong with my with Indiana. I don't have anything. I'm very happy to have been raised there. The work ethic and the way people act and behave toward one another in Indiana is glorious and gorgeous. But by the time I was 18, I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I bless my stars every day that I was raised in the Bible Belt. I mean, it's such a great place to be raised. I would definitely recommend raising children there. But by the time you're 18 and you're a male and you want to go out and do something big in the world, you got to get the fuck out of there as fast as possible. I mean, it's just the way it is. I don't know how to really sugarcoat that, but the idea of me having a home or a house and having like a broken window or having to mow the lawn or trim hedges or oh my god,
Yeah.
that's like my own personal nightmare. I just don't want to have anything to do with any of that. So people say, oh, he's in an apartment. He doesn't have a house. Yeah, it's by choice. I have a very nice apartment in a very nice area. I'm in Southern California. I have a 1200 cc motorcycle. I have an 800 horsepower Shelby GT 500. I've got tons of friends. I've got the sun, a million great places to eat. The mountains, the ocean. LA's got everything. I have 100,000 adoring fans that love me dearly. They offer me free places to stay, free event halls. I got a guy in Hawaii who was like, "Hey, if you ever want to do like an international meeting of all the fans, you can use my space for free." And all I have like 6 or 7 people that have offered me free event halls all over the country. I have my whole apartment is filled with fan gifts. This is a fan gift
I
here.
love it. Yeah.
I have this big huge TV as my computer monitor, and then underneath it I have these big cubbies like a media cubby center thing, and they're all just packed with love letters, cards, gifts. Some of them are handmade. A lot of the gifts that I get are handmade. I have these. I just put these up. Someone sent me these. These are custom made coasters, and they put a gram of silver inside of it, and
Oh,
then they poured resin over it. They made me this and this. This is
they
a
put a
real
lot of thought
coin.
into that. Yeah.
This is a real coin. So
You're
I
doing all
have,
right.
yeah, I got no complaints, man. I'll tell you, I got no complaints.
I've sent some love letters to you in the sense of some victories I've had. When I send a letter and some organization sends something back with no signature and just not being afraid and knowing my stuff, and like when someone uses the word UCC or the abbreviation UCC to try to scare me, I'm like, haha, you don't know.
It's so
I
weird
watched
that you
six
say that.
videos on what's
It's
that?
so, it's so weird that you say that because I bring up the UCC all the time to everyone, and the bar cards, they run from me when I start talking about the UCC. Oh my God. And the judges, they dismiss the cases so fast.
Yeah,
The UCC is like kryptonite. And you pull it out and you show it, and you really do know what you're talking about. That's the unique part, right? Because I really know what I'm talking about. And it's like sunlight.
right.
It's like moving uh something away from the window, and then the sunlight pours in and hits Dracula in the chest. It's
That's
letting
why
you
I want to
know.
learn more about what you're doing with the litigation and things. Yep. And that's what I love that people are missing. Like, not only do you want to learn these things and stand on your rights, your God given divine providence, constitutional of 1776 rights, but you want to,
Yeah, I like how you said that because you specified which constitution you were referring to.
yeah, because you said that earlier. Yeah.
If you didn't, then everyone would have assumed, pretty much everyone would have presumed you're talking about the 1868 14th Amendment.
Okay. You know what? In my mind, in my what we call an NLP, the map, in my map, It's always 1776, but that doesn't mean it's everybody's map. So yeah, to distinguish that with language,
The
definitely.
the public, the general public thinks that way, but the legal
Hmm.
system is totally the opposite. You say the word constitution, it's automatically assumed 14th Amendment right away, bang, for sure.
See, that's so great that you say that because I had no idea that distinction that you just mentioned. I
Yeah.
had no idea the legal environment thinks it's that constitution while the general public thinks it's 1776. And we're
Well,
already on two different paths.
you've heard
Yeah.
of people going into court and submitting the USA Constitution and then them being told that it has nothing to do with the courtroom and it's not admissible as evidence. You can find those examples really easily online and stuff like that. That's 100% true because, again, if the judge is a U.S. citizen and the jury is composed of U.S. citizens, they can't do anything with the original USA Constitution. It's not that original USA Constitution doesn't have anything to do with anyone in that courtroom. The only
I have a question.
constitution that has anything to do with any of those people in that courtroom is the 14th Amendment, which is called the federal constitution. So you have a
Okay.
constitution of the United States, and then you have a federal constitution. And you might say to me, well, Brandon, what are you doing? Just making up words? No. Mr. Miller himself in the slaughterhouse cases calls the 14th Amendment the federal constitution. And the word federal is capitalized and the word constitution is not. It's
These
uppercase F
matter. These
federal
things matter.
and
Yeah.
lowercase c constitution is exactly how what happened was in December. I had all these things and all these ideas and all this law and all the statute. And then in December of '04 is when I started to go out and just read cases by the truckload. And what's happened over the last 6 months since December of '04, which is the very end of the free course, by the way, is I've removed or started to remove all of the terminology everywhere and replace every word, every capitalization, every comma, every period, every semicolon with exact duplicates of what's inside of the case law from the Supreme Court.
Hmm.
And the reason why is because then you become invincible. There's nothing to argue about. There's no way anyone can fight it. It becomes a the most powerful weapon in the world. There's nothing anybody can do about it.
And what'd you find? And what'd you find when you substituted all the words with?
Now all of a sudden the bar cards can't do anything. Nobody can fight against my position. It's impossible to fight against any of my arguments.
Yeah.
And now
I,
all of a sudden I'm starting to get a little bit of traction in the courts, but it's going to
well, when you
require.
talk about that, I know from my situation, a court case that has been going on since November 2017, and it's still going on now. So I know how slow uh, the courts can move. And like you had mentioned in one of your more recent videos, that it's actually kind of a good thing. It feels like it's working out to be a positive.
But you're
And
in family court, right?
I'm in a different, yeah, it's not, yeah, I'm in family court.
Have you
Well,
ever seen the documentary Divorce Corp?
no.
Yeah, you're gonna be pretty pissed off. Watch
Listen, I got into this in 2017. I wouldn't, I know a whole bunch of different stuff now, but I
if
think
you
you're right.
anyone who's in family court or for you or anybody else, you have to go and watch a documentary called Divorce Corp.
Divorce court.
Very
Good.
important. It's very, very important.
I'm glad you're sharing that. Yeah.
Family court's not a real court, and they drag these cases on forever because they're getting paid and the lawyers are getting paid.
Yeah.
And they
I believe
break down how all that works and the functionality, why it's not a real court, and who's really there and how they got there. It's very detailed, and the solution to family court is to sue everyone. Let's say it's a husband and a wife, um, and you're the wife. Let's say in this situation, you're going to sue the judge, everyone else involved in that courtroom, plus your ex, plus anyone else that has anything to do with all of it. You're going to list them all as defendants, and you're going to pull that fake lawsuit up into a real court, either at the state or federal level.
Okay. When you talk about a real court, is this Article 1 versus Article 3 courts? Like, I have no idea what that means, but I
It's
know
it's
that.
literally not even it's literally not even a real court. It's literally not even attached to any sort of governmental body. It's literally just like a fake. It's like actors that like put together a set, and then like you're inside of a set with actors.
Yeah, this is incredible. Also, like, thank you for sharing that distinction. And I also learned about the United States Post Office. They revamped that, they rebranded that to the United States Postal Service. Like these little distinctions, like family court is not even a court. These are things that right now are blowing my mind. I don't know all these things, but I know they're on my list of things to learn. And divorce corp, yeah. So that's
Yeah,
another.
it's a really good documentary. It's very entertaining. It's very well said. It's very well produced. It's not boring. It's not. It's an action-packed, enjoyable, highly informative, highly empowering, excellent documentary.
Okay, that's great. I will watch that. I'll probably be pissed, like you said.
You're
I
gonna
was
be very
furious
pissed.
after Ian Carroll's. I could I was like I can't even, just the way we circumvent our own rights, you know, and they know. I forget what they call that. Private equity. Is that what he was talking about? Private equity, like how they're taking over all kinds of things, like the jumpy gyms and just you're signing your rights away. Well, you think you're just signing a waiver, but you're signing your human rights away. Uh,
There's a way that you can prevent all that. UCC 1-308 tells you how to do it. You're going to write without prejudice
right.
above or next to or below your signature. Without prejudice is the same thing as saying, I reserve all rights.
Okay.
Now, what we're starting to see now is there's so many people doing this because this is a lot of what I teach. Without prejudice is a huge part of what I teach and have been for a long time. Now it's getting so common as a practice that now businesses and stuff are starting to kind of sort of realize what that means. What they're doing is now they're denying people who are signing without prejudice. So now it's sort of like it's taken them a year or two to start doing that. And we're seeing some of that, not too much, but when it gets to be more common, at that point now, I've been recommending that people start to sue for discrimination.
Okay.
So if you write without prejudice and they don't
Yeah.
accept the signature, that would be, as far as I'm concerned, a discrimination lawsuit.
Right. Right. So I think level one is
Because they're
learning.
they're they're saying we will only commercially transact with you if you give up your human rights. Essentially, is what they're saying. If they're
Yes.
not
Right.
accepting, because if they offer a contract and you sign that contract without prejudice, they're offering you to give up your human rights. Your rebuttal, it's like they're trying to sell you something for 10 grand. Your rebuttal is I'll pay 10 grand, but, and then like in the contract world, when
Mm-hmm.
you sign and then put without prejudice, you're saying I agree to everything on this that doesn't burn or toss my human rights in the nearest trash can.
Right.
So like
Exactly.
everything that's not a human rights violation or a rights violation, I'm okay with. Anything that is a human rights or rights violation is out. And then at that point, like that being your counter offer, and then them saying like, no, we're not going to work with you unless you throw your rights in a trash can. As far as I'm concerned, at that point, that's just discrimination.
It's discrimination, and it also echoes the Ninth Amendment that you started with.
Well,
Like, don't, I mean, not technically. I'm just saying, like, the feeling of it. You
yeah,
don't hurt someone.
yeah. The
That's
Ninth Amendment, the Ninth Amendment in commercial transactions is a little bit tricky, but yeah, yes, you're right. It's just there's a little bit more of a discussion there to be had, which is probably a little bit
right.
too much for this show. But yes, the Ninth Amendment, in order to use the Ninth Amendment, you have to be pretty knowledgeable with some of this information. The Ninth Amendment is not just something that you just get in 5 seconds necessarily. The Ninth Amendment is like a big, huge sword that you have to kind of work up to a little bit. It's not the longest thing in the world, but the Ninth Amendment is
An 8-year elevator?
you're looking at so the history in the courts is they don't acknowledge the Ninth Amendment and they never say reason why, because if they say why, it'll fuck up the whole game. The
Mm,
reason why is because people are identifying as U.S. citizens. That's why. That is the real reason why that the Ninth Amendment is something that was never incorporated in the incorporation doctrine, and the courts don't allow it or operate off of it. But the deeper reason as to why the Ninth Amendment is not used or acknowledged in the courts is because they can't acknowledge it. It's above their level of being able to even process through the courts.
mhm,
The Ninth Amendment is only for state citizens, and the courts no longer have the ability to even put together a grand jury for a state citizen. So they can't say yes or no to the Ninth Amendment. The Ninth Amendment is above the court's pay grade, as much as that's weird to even hear or say.
yeah.
Um, when the courts start to operate correctly, they're going to have two different subsections. They're going to have one subsection for state citizens, and they're going to have one subsection for U.S. citizens. The U.S. citizen subsection can continue to operate the way it is right now because that is how it's supposed to operate. Everything's operating exactly how it's supposed to work. On the state citizen side of the equation, it's going to be a completely different court with a completely different type of judges because the judges themselves have to be state citizens. The juries have to be state citizens. So it's going to be a completely separated legal section. So, like, imagine a courtroom. You watch old movies like Tombstone, like the old Wild West movies.
Mhm,
Imagine, like, in the courthouse, there's two different sections. Like, the first four floors are for the U.S. citizen cases, and then the floor 5 through 8 is for state citizens. The state citizen courtrooms are going to look and act like a lot of what you see in the old Wild West movies. Whereas the U.S. citizen courtrooms are going to operate exactly what you see in the society right now today if you go down to the courthouse. And that's where we're headed at a very, very, very fast rate of speed right now as we speak.
yeah. Incredible. And you're part of that wave, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be egotistical. I just think it's the
No.
truth. I think I'm at the very, very razor's tip of that wave.
Yeah, I mean, I just watching you grow from 1.0 to 2.0, and I don't really follow your growth on the social media, but I know like you're growing in audience. Um, but yeah, I'm glad to be a part of it and learning from you. And I'm glad to introduce it to my my audience too, which is not as large as yours yet, but I'm working on it. And my whole thing is to empower people to feel better about their lives. And so, that's on, like I said, that glacier of change. It's on every single level. Not only behaviors, if you want to quit smoking, or maybe you don't want to quit smoking, you just want to smoke after dinner, whatever. Doesn't matter. Beliefs, identity, cultural, ancestral, karmic. So this would be more like in the cultural and community kind of layer. It's deep. It's deep. It's like handed down generationally, generationally, generationally. And you just accept what is taught to you, because your parents, your elders told you that, or that's just how it is. You pay taxes and you die. Um, and you're helping us wake up to that, the truth. And that is like so, so freaking foundational and important. It When you get it on that level, when you feel better on that level, when you feel empowered on that level, that serves and feeds everything up, you know? So when you get a ticket or you get pulled over for that example, which I'm not experienced with yet, but you know how to talk and you know what to say and you know how to stay calm and you feel good in your what your knowledge is and you understand it and you have a success. that feeds everything. It doesn't ruin your day. Like these little things can't ruin your day.
Yeah,
And that's, I feel like that's divinely, you know, coming back to, I don't feel like we're supposed to work 40 hours a day at a desk, in a cubicle and get off 2 weeks a year and retire and then die. Like that's not to me what God put us here for. And now when we're not so distracted with all this freaking admin,
that's correct. Yeah, I can't file a tax return. If I did, I go to prison. I can't register my car. If I did, I go to prison. I can't get a driver's license. If I did, I go to prison. Um, there's life becomes simple. I don't pay sales tax. I don't file any tax returns. I don't even have an accountant. I fired my accountant. I fired my
don't need
lawyer.
them. It's not like you fired him because you're mean. You don't need him.
No, I mean, I'd have to go, at first, your relationship with your lawyer and your accountant, the way it's going to go is you're going to try to explain to them some of these things. They're going to call you a sovereign citizen, or they're going to do something like vapor money theory, and they're going to jerk off and all this horse shit, bullshit stuff that the people have to do. And then you're going to realize that it's more work to keep this person here. Now I'm educating them for free and paying them to do essentially nothing at this point. Um, and then you might be a little bit scared about it because you feel like now you're kind of going solo. It's kind of like you're jumping out of the nest by yourself, and you're going to have maybe some fear reaction to what's going on. But within short order, you're just even with the fear reaction, you're still just going to be like, there's just no reason to have this guy here. There's no reason to pay him. It's scary, but I just don't. It's just the dumbest thing. Why am I
I know.
paying this person? It does not
And
make any sense why I'm
it's
paying this person.
I have a colleague that is so successful as a coach, and because that's what I'm technically a coach. And she just rocketed off and she talks about her accountant. And I mean, I mentioned it, but it would rock like her identity a little too much. It would definitely would rock the accountant's identity. So she's not there yet, and when she is, it's floating there for her. But
If I hired an accountant, that accountant would become an accomplice in a felony.
mm,
If because the accountant would be filing tax returns of which would be felonies. So the accountant, it would be a conspiracy charge, which like 10 X's. So like if I was going to go to jail for 3 years for filing a tax return, if I hired an accountant who filed a tax return on my behalf, that would be a felony, but it'd be a conspiracy charge. Conspiracy is two or more people working together to commit a crime at the same time, and it increases the penalties by like 10x in most situations. So
mhm,
if I hired an accountant to file a tax return on my behalf, I'd be looking at up to 30 years in prison, pretty much.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Most people can't like they haven't wrapped their head around that yet.
No, that's the 4 years up the elevator.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying it for the shock value. It's real. It's very real. I'm not embellishing anything. It's extremely realistic. But it's that 4 years up the elevator kind of information. You hear from Trump, not that I hate Trump, you hear from
Hmm.
Trump, uh, 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 no tax on tips. And then I'm telling you that in contrast to that conversation is if I hired an accountant and he filed a tax return on my behalf, it'd be a conspiracy charge. I mean, hell, you could even go RICO at that point.
And that's
You could
because you
you could have a RICO charge on your hand. Now, will the government ever prosecute anything like that? No, not in 80 trillion years. Never going to happen. I'm saying on paper, with the law, from a very, very purist standpoint, you're
mhm.
looking at a conspiracy charge, felonies, and a RICO case.
And that is because you are
A
a
state
state citizen.
citizen. That's correct.
Exactly. I'm learning, see? Well, Brandon, before we wrap up, I'm just going to recap those action steps for my
Yeah.
peeps, your people, because I always find like bite-sized pieces will keep me going. So once again, the Contract Killer Course 2.0, it's free. Go to Brandon's website, williamsandwilliams.com. He showed you in the header there how to get onto that. You don't even need to take the course, but sign up for the emails, whatever you want. And then his videos on YouTube, um, federal tax and asset protection, in other words, trusts, are easy ways to introduce yourself to this. And one addition I want to add on my experience is I'm going back to paper statements for everything because all this automated stuff, it's super convenient, but that's just another way you're giving your rights away. And when I asked somebody for a paper statement and they said you have to call the corporate office. So I called the corporate office because they didn't have a toggle where I could switch it to paper. Some of the apps did, but they said you have to call corporate. I called corporate. Corporate said I had to call local office. I called local, which was the first place I called anyway. And they bounced me back to corporate. And they just keep bouncing me back and forth. They don't want to give me a paper statement. So anyway, my point is go back to paper statements. The convenience is what lulls you into compliance on some of
The
these.
reason why they're doing that is because this thing is getting so big, by the way.
I agree with you. I agree with you. There, I get the sense of that. I felt that. Yeah.
They're terrified, absolutely fucking terrified,
As they should be.
as they should be. That's correct.
So go back to paper statements. The convenience is not worth it. Okay. That's all my to do my action steps for you. Brandon, do you have anything else to add?
Um, you know, everything. I know it's a little bit more of an advanced thought, but I think it's really important to get
Yeah.
throw out there at the beginning, at this point in the conversation, and at this point in my research. Don't let anybody fluster you. Don't let anybody, just treat everything like you're just building evidence for a lawsuit. And I know that sounds scary, and I know you don't want to litigate, and I know all these things, and I know all these things, but I'm telling you, if you think of it that way, you don't get angry. You're not going to get upset. You're not going to be screaming on the phone. You're not going to be freaking out. Your blood pressure's not going to go through the roof. You're not going to have cortisol spikes.
Yes.
All this stuff.
Yes.
Everything is just do 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 do, sipping some whiskey. A little
Put
something.
it in
Doo,
the
doo, doo.
folder.
You're
Put it in the
just
file.
get a little. Oh, got a letter. Open it up. Great. This is great evidence. File it into the evidence folder. Boop boop boop. Record some phone calls. Boop boop. Recording evidence. Let's let you know this call is being recorded. If you're in a two-party state, you have to have their consent to record them. Most states are not. Most states are a one-party state. You can record them without them ever knowing. They'll say that's not true, but it's a very quick Google lookup. Is North Carolina a two-party state for recording phone calls? Bang, it'll pretty much tell you. I would definitely double check the information that comes up on Google under the AI just to be 100% sure. Dig just a little deeper just to make sure and verify that whatever Google is telling you is 100% accurate. You definitely wouldn't want to get yourself in a situation where you were told something by Google and then it wound up not being true and then now you're in trouble. So just be a little
Mhm.
careful about that. Double check it. Record your phone calls, save your files
Your
in your Google
voicemail.
Drive, download your voicemails, save
Right.
those in Google Drive because you never know. They might sue you, or you might sue them. I push people really hard towards being the first one to litigate. So I know that's scary. I know for most women, that's not something they want to do. It's a very gender based thing. Most men want to run in there right away. Women are
Mhm.
typically not so much. But the thing is that either way, if they sue you in 6 months and you've got all that stuff all filed and organized, I'm telling you, they're going to drop the case so fast, it's going to make your head spin. You're going to be blown away. Wow, that was really easy. If
Mhm.
you don't behave this way, it's going to be an emotional, cortisol filled ride that you're not really going to enjoy. It changes the whole energy of the whole thing. Just everything is evidence. You get it? Oh, how cool. Thank you for sending me some evidence. File it away.
You totally nail it. It's true. It doesn't rock your day. Your cortisol doesn't spike. Even if it does a little when you're getting used to it, just save it. Make a folder and save it. It's not the end of the world. Don't let it ruin your day. Think in the long game. This is the long game.
And
Just
what's amazing was when you start just acting that way, everyone stops trying to talk to you. They stop sending you threatening letters. They stop
yeah.
all this stuff because they start to realize everything. It's like the Miranda rights. Everything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Mhm.
Think about that in reverse.
Mhm.
From your perspective, everything they say can and will be used against them in a court of law.
Mhm.
You don't
And when
see
you
anybody suing me. You wonder
right,
why that is.
when you put that mirror up to them, they don't do it
That's
with you.
correct.
Yeah.
And you don't even need
Yeah.
to tell them. You don't even need to tell them. Just do it. Just start filing everything away as evidence and start presenting it during cases. And If they sue you, start presenting it because what they'll do is whenever any of these companies or organizations sue anybody, typically, if it's for more than a couple $1,000s, which for that they just don't care. But if it's anything worthwhile, they'll type your name into Pacer, which is or they'll type your name into the state. There's the state system for all the state cases, and then there's the federal system, which is called Pacer, Pacer. They'll go in there and they'll type your name in, and they'll see if there's anything that's ever happened with you. And typically, if they see your name at all and they click on it and they see that you know even how to file into a case, they won't
Hmm.
even sue you.
Hmm.
Like people don't understand the bar to success with all this stuff is so unbelievably low. It it
Right.
it will blow your mind. The fact that you even have the capacity to file into a case, not even what you said in your filing, just just them looking up your name and seeing, oh shit, she actually filed into a case 2 years ago. That alone will divert 90% of anyone who will ever sue you. That just just the fact that something was filed into a case, not even what was in it.
Right.
Just the
I
fact that something paper went into the docket, that
understand.
alone is enough to get the bar card to say, fuck this, I'm not bothering with this. It's too much work.
One other thing I can't remember if you shared this or if I read it somewhere, so tell me if it's yours. Um, those cases where they bring judgments on credit cards and things like that, like 99% of the people don't even show up. They're just
If you don't respond, then they
default.
win every time through a default judgment.
Yeah, exactly. Because most people don't even show up. Um,
That's why they sue. They kick out. They'll just on their computer they'll do like an export of like all of the people who didn't pay for like any amount under like $2,500, which is all small claims.
mm,
They'll kick it out to a law firm. The law firm will file small claims suits, which is like 70 or $80 for each lawsuit on like 5 or 6,000 people. They'll get default judgments on like 97% of them. And
mhm,
then I imagine it's something along the lines of like the law firm gets to keep half and then half goes back to the American Express or whoever. I would assume that's kind of how they have it set up, right? If you respond at all to any of these little lawsuits, they typically just dump them. They'll just dismiss
mhm,
it. And the reason why is because it costs more money to pay the lawyer to send in one single filing into the case than it does
mhm,
to simply dismiss the case.
mhm. And they've got 99% or 97% of the other
They
ones.
don't need you. Yeah, if you so much as even put up the slightest little hoot, they just dump the case.
Yeah.
It literally costs more to have an attorney file into a case than it does to just simply get rid of the case.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, if it's millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands, or if somebody's been harmed, or if there's an emotional connection, or if there's children involved, obviously that's not the case, and everyone wants to die on the battlefield. That's totally different.
Right.
I'm talking about your typical person getting a typical five, six, seven, eight, nine, $10,000 lawsuit.
Yeah.
Costs more fucking money, currency, to have the lawyer file into the damn thing than it's even worth having it there. It's shocking to people who are new to this information to see how fast these lawsuits disappear. It's unbelievable. You could file in you could file in a hand-drawn pencil picture of a cat
I was
face
thinking of that when you said that.
and
I
they're
was
gonna
thinking with
freaking
red
dismiss the
crayon.
case. I'm serious.
Right.
You could crayon a picture of your childhood home with smoke coming
Yeah.
out of the chimney and they'll dismiss the case.
And make sure you put the lawn out front, the
Seriously.
green grass.
Green grass. I'm serious. It's amazing.
Uh,
Now, obviously, again, what I just said isn't necessarily true for big, huge cases or emotionally charged cases, but
right.
for your typical person with your typical $6,000 credit card, that's the situation.
Yeah, it's definitely people. It's worth learning about. If you're not ready to like walk into it yet, don't just learn about it.
Now,
So,
what I teach that's so unique is that if they sue you, you're going to counter sue them. So like every time my people are sued, we don't just try to get the case dismissed. And that's typically what everyone teaches in this space.
Yeah,
Oh
right,
no.
right.
Oh no, you come knocking on my door. Uh, y- y- Everyone teaches like this. You come knocking on my door, I'm going to send you packing. That's not what we do. You come knocking on my door, I'm going to grab you by the throat. I'm pulling you in my house and I'm tying you. I'm going to handcuff you to the fucking radiator and you're mine, bitch. You're mine. That it's a totally different mindset.
Yeah, it is.
You knock on my door, you're living in my basement now in a
Yeah,
fucking gimp suit. Do you know what I mean? Like we're not playing games. Do you know what I mean? So like what I
yeah,
teach is so different and it's so different than anything anyone's ever seen because think about this. If everyone out there is just teaching how to get dismissals, you got these bullies and these psychopaths running around suing everybody. And the worst
yes.
thing that can possibly happen to them is a dismissal. That's not that's not any sort of consequence.
Consequence.
They wasted your time. They drove you crazy. They made you scared. They made you
Yes.
angry. They did all this stuff. They
They
spiked your
harass
cortisol.
you.
You're getting in fights with your wife, your husband, your boyfriend. You don't want to date anymore. You're too
Some
exhausted. You
people
start
are killing
drinking,
themselves. Some people
killing
are killing
themselves, all this stuff. It's like, no, 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 motherfucker. You knock on my door, you are going to have a ball gag in your mouth. I will feed you when I'm ready to fucking feed you. Do you see
and
the
you're going to
difference?
have a consequence.
And
I
you're gonna
totally
love
do.
it. You're gonna love it. And if you don't, then you just won't get fed. Fuck you. You're gonna starve to death. You'll eat what I want when I say it, and if you don't like it, I'm not gonna feed you.
Yep. They mess with the wrong one, in other words, or not a complacent one that just doesn't show up to court and gets a default judgment. And that's a movement. So we're in this
So
movement.
that to end the nightmare is not just to get a bunch of dismissals. To
Mm,
get a bunch of dismissals, you would need to have like 70 or 80% of all the cases dismissed, and even then, they'd probably still be doing it. What
right.
you got to do is you got to hit them over the head, and they wake up in a bathtub with their liver removed.
And
That's what you want. That's because then it only takes like 5%, and now all of a sudden they're oh man, this could be one of them people. You see what I mean? Now all
yeah,
of a
totally.
sudden, now all of a sudden with just 5%, all of a sudden now the whole attitude, the whole zeitgeist of the whole thing is
Exactly.
completely shifted because
Even
they
more.
don't know. They don't know. I could knock on this guy's door and I could be in a ball gag in 6 minutes. I don't know.
He could be
You see
one
what
of
I
them.
mean? He could be one
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah. And
But
then,
the
yeah.
thing is that if we do it that way, it's better, it's more fun, it's more empowering. Plus, we're shifting the society and the real issue at a much higher rate, and we need much less people to get something really awesome
Yeah.
completed.
Yep. Yeah.
So
And basically what you're
during this
saying,
course, I've been during this the course of this podcast, I've been talking about dismissals because that's what is real in people's minds. But that's not really where we're going, and that's not really where we are.
and I'm going to translate for the women mostly for me. Like I think the imagery that came up was Hannibal Lecter, which makes me scared.
Yes.
So, so I'm going to
But
translate.
but you're doing it to create a beautiful tomorrow where the children that are growing up don't have to deal with this
Deal with,
fucking nightmare
yeah,
where they're in family court for 7.5 years and they kill the I've had 6 or 7 people email me telling me they were literally had the gun in their mouth when they
no,
found my
yeah,
information.
yes, it's very real. And it's, the financial things make people jump for real. It's just terrible. It's torture, it's harassment, it's evil. It's absolutely evil. It's predatory, all those things. And what my translation of what you just shared, you're being the masculine of it. I'm going to say you go on the offense, like the feminine version of what Brandon just said, the scared version, like the scared of that imagery version is you're going on the offense. Someone's going on the offense. Brandon's talking about you're going to be afraid to knock on his door because, you're not going to get this pushover. And in other words, you're going to go on the offense. Not only are you not going to be afraid when they sue you or threaten to sue, you're going to sue them. and you're going to win because they violated X, because they violate things like
Even
font.
if even if we don't win, even if we don't win, just by countersuing and just by being in there and just swinging that bat as hard as we can at their kneecaps,
You win.
it will change everything. We don't really even have to win. I mean, obviously we want to win. We're going for a win, but to win, to file a countersuit and to become their worst nightmare, that they like wake up at night with
Is winning.
sweats,
That's
it's
winning.
really not that hard to do that. To win cases, I'll be the first one to tell you it's a lot harder than you think. Um,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's a lot harder for them to win. You got like the reason why not, you have these law firms and they file all these millions of suits is because there's so many law firms out there. All they do is they work every day for default judgments. That's all
Hmm.
they do.
The bread and butter.
That's all they do. Every once in a while, like you'll see these. Let's say there's some huge celebrity case, and you have this huge, well-known attorney who's in there, like a trial attorney, right? Like, I'll be the first one to say bar cards. I don't like them. Okay, but at the same time, if I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with like a trial attorney, somebody who's in there day
Mitigating.
after day
Yeah.
after day litigating a criminal trial,
Yes.
I would love to have a cigar with him and pick his brain and be that is an actual attorney.
Right.
You are talking to someone who is an actual attorney.
Yeah.
Whereas 90 something percent of the whole profession is just a bunch of idiots in suits that file lawsuits praying to God that no one ever responds. And then when they don't, they file a motion for default judgment and it's signed by the judge. And then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
That's a majority of all these people's careers. Why do you
Yeah.
need to go to school for 6 years and do all this stuff and go to law school, which you don't even have to go to, by the way, it's irrelevant, and get on the bar and do all this stuff and do all these things just to file in, copy and paste lawsuits, didn't pay this bill, copy and paste it, swap out the names, file in a lawsuit. And then if they respond at all, you just drop the case. And if they don't respond, you file in a motion for default judgment. That's it. That's
Yeah.
the whole profession.
I understand. Yep. Yep. And that's why what we're doing is so important. What you're teaching is so important because they've gotten away with that lazy model for so long that's victimizing hardworking people who are drowning,
That's correct.
drowning financially, drowning mentally.
It's the
So,
laziest profession on the planet. I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, you really don't have to do literally anything. I mean,
mhm,
filing a lawsuit, you can e-file them now. You copy and paste what you did last week. You click a couple buttons, and then once the court stamps the summons, you're going to file in a summons. Once the court stamps the summons, you upload the summons into your process server, which is the people who are going to be delivering the paperwork that serve the documents. You click two more buttons. The process server is dispatched within 3 or 4 or 5 days. Uh, then the process server gives you an affidavit stating that the defendant, if you're the plaintiff, was served. You're going to file in a notice to the court, letting the court know that the defendant was served, which is also going to be a copy and paste the same thing you did last week. At that point, you wait 20 or 30 days to see if they're ever going to file in. They don't. You're going to copy the same motion for default judgment that you filed in the last 100 cases. You're going to change out just the names. That's really all you're going to change out. You're going to file that into the case. The judge is going to say, "Yep, you're correct." Sign it, and then that's your whole career for 30 years, 20 years.
yeah. If you're not litigating, if you're not in there arguing cases and you're doing something like this, yeah, it's
I
it's
just
not a lot.
explained to you like literally the almost the entire legal profession.
I mm, wow. Yeah.
And you don't need to go to law school and you don't need to get a bar degree or anything to do that. You can go out and help other people do that same activity. It's just that they would file in pro se, like you wouldn't put your name as the lawyer on there. You would just
Right.
help them do it and they would put their name on it. And you could make just as much money as any other attorney without any bar card or legal degree or schooling at all whatsoever. And you could do the exact same thing I just described to you. And you could sue other people on behalf of other people and have them put their name on it. And you could do the exact same thing. And you could have yourself a $150,000 a year career starting tomorrow
Yeah.
with
Well,
no legal
we're on that,
degree.
yeah, because we're on that wave. Attorney, and you get into this and we can, you know, talk about again another time. You get into like attorney in fact versus attorney at law. These are more of the word things you need to know. But yeah, things are shifting, paradigms are shifting, people are waking up. We're, you know, it's a time. We've reached a tipping point, I feel. And it's good. It's good if we can get through this and survive this with our sanity. And we made it this far. This last 5 years were a crucible, especially. And I think, we're better for it, actually, if it
Yeah.
hadn't happened. But so before, I just want to ask you before we complete and close, I'm going to turn off the recording and then you and I can, settle and see what we're going to do next. Maybe we'll talk again if you want. What is like the parting words that you would leave um, the audience and the listeners for today's episode?
I
Anything?
mean, just you manufacture all your own currency all the time. You aren't a U.S. citizen. Paying taxes is a felony. Having a driver's license is a felony. Uh, you know, it's just,
Blow their minds, Brandon. Blow their minds.
that's it. I
Parting
mean,
word.
you're
Pow,
you're
pow,
you're
pow.
you're a walking bank and a walking felon, and you don't even know it, basically.
Yeah. All right. All right. Awesome. Okay. Well, I left you Brandon's website,
Wi-
williamsandwilliams.com.
Williams and Williams Law Firm.com. But you can get there
Williams and
through onestupidfuck.com. It's got links to all that.
is one stupid fuck ONE
Yeah.
or okay,
Yeah, it's the
ONE
word. It's the word, not the number. It's the word.
onestupidfuck.com, and it leads you to Williams and Williams Law Firm.
Well, everything
And
is that's like my central hub. Like everything comes branches out of there. Everything.
yeah, I mean, I have them open on my phone. Like I always have a little tab of them
Yeah.
open. And then I'm Tanya Tecce.us/resilience. I have a course, a 2-module course to introduce you to the neurolinguistic way of healing anxiety and reprogramming your mind. We're reprogramming a lot of things here because the old programs are outdated. But and
A
they
little
got
bit.
all
Yeah.
right. I'm gonna turn the recording off and say bye. But um, I'm happy that you guys were here,
Thanks for
and I'm
having
so
me on.
glad.
I hope your audience enjoys the show.
Definitely, definitely.